Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube and you look down, you'll see a little link to the Zoom link. You can register there and then join the actual conversation rather than watching it later. You can watch it later too, but that's one option. If you are here as an attendee, you'll see a panelist here. And over time, you'll watch this and think that you know better than we do. And you might. So we'd love to have you come and join us and bring your knowledge into this panel. We open at 6 o'clock. From 6 to 6:40. We're just talking about stuff. We're having tea, we're having coffee. In fact, today we were talking about our tea and coffee, but we're also talking about tech and other little bits and pieces. Sometimes it's the most interesting part of the day. So you're more than welcome to come here at 6 and hang out with us. And then at 6:40, we'll put out the Discord link. The Discord link is where almost 800 of us keep on talking about this stuff between shows. 6:42, we do the mic checks. Once we start the mic checks for the panel is closed. You have to come back another day. So if you want to be on the panel, you just need to be here before 6:40. Raise your digital Zoom hand, and we'll bring you in and see if it works out. You just need to have good internet, good audio, good video, and some good ideas. So hopefully you'll come join us in the panel at some point. Once we get to 7 o'clock, 7 to 8 is always an opened forum. So we talk about whatever questions you have around media production, virtual production, those types of things. From 8 to 9, we have a more specific discussion. So Mondays is kind of a wild card. Tuesdays are audio. Wednesdays are video and cameras. Thursdays are special guests. Friday and Saturday are both education. And Sunday, we just keep going with the first hour. So it's generally a slower moving, more philosophical approach to the process. So today we're going to be talking about education in the second hour. I have to leave at 9 in the second hour, but if you guys want to keep going, I'll just step out and let you keep going. I know that on Saturdays, we've talked longer in the past. The last 2 Saturdays, the last Saturday and this Saturday, I've had some Saturday morning productions to do that are, interestingly enough, part of education. So anyway, so I'll be working on that. But if there's still a lot of questions, we'll keep going. Bill, can I persuade you to do the questions?
I will be happy to. Let me get over to the...
Yep. Yeah. And so if you have questions, this is the right time to ask. So just remember that you are the producers. As the attendees, you're the producers. You're asking the questions. You're voting on those questions. So what we talk about, and if you wonder why we waxed on for 15 minutes on some certain subject, it was because there was only 2 or 3 questions left, and we didn't want to get to the end where we went, okay, we have nothing else to talk about. So asking lots of questions will increase the pace of our answers as well. So a lot of times the math that I'm doing is how many minutes are left in our Q&A and how many questions do we have? So it's the number of minutes divided by the number of questions. So you'll notice that things speed up if there's more questions. If you have questions specifically about audio, I mean, not audio, I'm sorry, education, it's the education day, put edu : so we know to put that into the second hour. All right, go ahead, Bill.
First question today, Rachel Ann Clifton asks, can you discuss the perils of having neon in a video? An interview conducted with a neon sign on their office wall is causing distortion once the video is uploaded to Instagram. Thanks.
I'd be curious what distortion means. What that means by distortion, whether it's macro blocking or distortion itself. So whether it's actually distorting the image. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I've experienced a lot that some neon, not all neon, but some neon puts off a ton of RF, so much that we've had horrible circumstances with trying to mic people with wireless mics and stuff like that. So make sure all your shielding and all your grounds are completely well set if you're going to shoot around neon.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I've seen that with older neon, but bigger, more important is anything that's flashing, that's doing any type of movement, turning on, turning off, and that can always cause problems overall.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Also, you need to remember there's a high voltage electromagnetic field surrounding that, and it can affect actually the camera scanning and sometimes can affect cameras and other analog capture devices as well, besides the audio.
Yes. So yeah, neon, real neon, which we don't see very often, which is really cool. I had to build some computer graphics that were all based on neon. And so the great thing about doing like 3D modeling or building something out that you have to do that has to look perfectly real is that you have to do lots of reference. And so I went through thousands of photos of neon and really understood how they build it. And it made me want to make neon because it's just a fascinating, beautiful thing. But yeah, it does interfere with a lot of our electronics. Next question.
I'm sorry, Jeffrey Reyes says, Alex, why did you switch your microphone from the DPA 4066 to the Countryman H6?
So the story was the story of how we got here is I still have the DPA and I will use it in my office. I'm at home now. I've been going back and forth with them. I'm using the Countryman because we needed two dual ear high quality mics for 22 kits that we were building for they're nice kits for a production we're working on. And so we had to send out all these kits, and sourcing that many DPAs turned out to be more complicated than we wanted. We wanted black because we have a lot of people with different complexions, and we wanted to not have a neutral color, not a tan, not the beige color, because it didn't match everybody's skin tone. And so we wanted just black, and just have it be the same for everyone. And so anyway, finding black DPAs in short order is hard. Countryman, and I've known Chris Countryman, for years, and Countryman is in Menlo Park, so they're not very far from us. And so, we still organize through, all the things, all the normal channels, but we were able to kind of get those things accelerated through the channel, the standard sales channels. But we were able to at least call someone local that could talk to us about it, tell us where to get them, quickly. So we were able to get those. To get them a little faster than we would have normally been able to do it. And so getting black ones was the thing. So once I got one, I had to test it because I have to show people how to put it on and everything else live. And what I did is I started testing it, and I found that I felt that my sound was clearer, not as bassy. The bass response isn't quite the same as the DPA, but I found that it was a more present sound than the DPA when I tested it side by side. And so now I'm leaning more towards the Countryman for my voice. With all mics, it depends on your voice. My voice has already got a fair bit of bass in it, so I think that it works well for what I'm doing, and I like it. I like the look. So more than the DPA, it's a smaller capsule. So anyway, that's why I moved to the H6. And I still have the 4066. The H6 is considerably less expensive too. Just as a note, it's a couple $100 less than the DPA. So it's also affordable. But the primary reason I picked it up, or more affordable, I don't know if it's affordable, but the primary reason I did it was because I felt like the sound was more present. Anyway, next question.
Beju asked us thoughts on the remote attendee kit being sent out to the Emmys folks. Equipment, infrastructure, packaging, assembly. From the initial look, it does seem to be a completely thought out or designed for non-technical users to easily set up and configure. I saw, are they sending out Blackmagic 6Ks to all the Emmy attendees? I think I saw something about it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I do think that sending out the laptops kind of makes sense because it means that there's less. We send out kits all the time, and people don't have that, and it tends to be a challenge. Like, do they have a PC, or what year of their iMac, or what? There's all these things that we rarely send out computers without people to run them. But if you send them out with a team viewer and it's got that, you can kind of turn it all on and work through it. And the only thing I would have added there, and maybe it's there, would be an ATEM Mini, so that you can shade the camera and affect zoom and focus. I mean, that's really the big advantage of the ATEM Mini, is being able to kind of talk to the camera as needed. Go ahead, Courtney.
I didn't see the article. Did they say what platform they're using to transmit the picture with?
My guess it's going to be Zoom or something like it. I mean, it looks like if they're doing a laptop, it looks like they're setting up for Zoom. And right now, I mean, if you're doing point-to-point, low latency, I think Zoom is the right solution at the moment for overall quality and ease of use. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, they are packaging an ATEM Mini with it. So part of the reason for the laptop might be for remote control as well. So they might have something remote access to it, and they could shade the camera remotely.
That's perfect. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that in a couple different ways. We're experimenting with these. They're I want to say G locks, and it's not me experimenting with them. It's Brent Schnarr, who's sometimes on our panel. He's experimenting with some stuff that would let us, really inexpensive boxes that that will let you remote control the cameras, and it's like just a little VPN box that's tiny and inexpensive that can do it, but it's not going to do it's not going to do the whole Zoom connection. So you would still need something there to attach to it. Go ahead, TJ, and then Jeffrey.
The article did specifically mention that the transmission was going to be over Wi-Fi at the participant's home.
That's crazy. So that's someone who doesn't do this. As soon as someone says and then we're going to do it over Wi-Fi, that they actually don't know what they're talking about. This is a TV person who doesn't understand how many frames they're going to give up for that. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and added to that, they actually said that they're going to be using vMix for their captures. So I don't know if they're going to go through the vMix vMix call or go through Zoom or something.
My guess is vMix to vMix.
Yeah, but they might do a Zoom to vMix if that's not working.
And it will work. vMix is using, I believe, that's WebRTC, vMix to vMix, I believe. It's interesting that they would have the vMix going onto Mac laptops. So it might be that they're actually using, it may not be vMix. If they're doing that, it's probably not vMix to vMix. It's probably just vMix caller to a web page that's on the computer, which I could see. And if they pre-configured those laptops, it wouldn't be very hard. The hard part with vMix is that the WebRTC function needs the browser to know what camera and what mic it's looking at. So you have to go into the browser and say, this is my camera and this is my microphone. There's no way to do it in the app. So my guess is that's why they're with vMix, they're probably pre-configuring Chrome or whatever to do that. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
And notice that the MacBooks, they're 2015 or 16 MacBooks because they're the Thunderbolt
15.
2 rather than the Thunderbolt 3. So that's pretty interesting. It's
because it's got more
ports on it.
Ports on it. Amazing. Everything hasn't been stupefied to USB-C. Not that I'm bitter. Paul.
Yeah, let me get this right. They're going to send that elaborate setup out to all the nominees. Is that what's going on here? That's like
correct.
Way too many moving parts for
an
Academy Award nominee to handle.
It's not. Well, we're not seeing it in its finished state. I bet you they'll wrap some of that up. And we send out pretty complicated kits, but what we do is everything's marked and we tape off everything you don't need to use, and we send you little videos on how to do it, and then we call you and spend a half an hour with you trying to get it all working. So there is a nug to getting it done, but it definitely can be done. And then that isn't with, again, those instructions and with calls and commitment to it, you can definitely get something set up. Go ahead, Courtney.
These are Academy Award nominees. These aren't tech people that they're sending these
right.
to.
Well, not tech people. They're actors and producers and directors. Right. But it looks the way they, from looking at the picture, it looks like they're set up to have an operator operating the laptop, and the talent or the actor is going to be on the other side. So they're seeing the second output, and they're seeing a clean image return, probably on the
that might be somebody
below the camera, and so somebody's going to be running that laptop and doing all the technical stuff for them, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is that a lot of the Emmy Award winners have a staff, so that it's not completely. We've worked with their staff, for those kinds of things where we send them kits, and we're not working with the actual actress or actor. We are working with their assistant, who is generally hired partially because they're very tech savvy. The one thing you'll find is that assistants for most of the actors that at least that we've worked with, one of the primary things is they're pretty smart. They know how to put this stuff together really fast. But again, I've definitely worked with people who I've sent kits to that are not digital natives. I think I've done tech setups with Jane Goodall at least 3 times. and she's definitely not a tech native, but she figured it out. She's smart. She's a smart woman. So so I think that it can be done even if people don't understand all the little bits and pieces. And we definitely, and then we've had things where we've sent out very simple kits and people can't figure out how to get it all working. So it is, but generally we send out a lot of kits. We send out probably 10 or 15 kits a week of some size. And so I'm used to the process. They're not as elaborate as this one most of the time. Usually if I send one out like that, I'm going to send one out that is with a person. But it can be done. Go ahead, Courtney, and then Sky.
Yeah, and I would imagine they're going to do also with AutoCue doing a remote teleprompter on that front-facing monitor to the talent for anybody who's doing presentations, presenters. so that they can control, what they're saying and when they're saying it.
Yep. Sky.
I'm just thinking there's going to be a lot of good used Blackmagic 4K cameras available pretty soon.
They'll probably let them keep them, I bet you. Anyway, next question.
Lauren Strobes asked from the panel here, any advice on when to use high fidelity music mode in Zoom, and does it make a big difference? Are there any downsides to it?
We definitely find that it makes a big difference. I mean, it sounds great. The downside is it depends on the quality of your audio system and your environment. So letting Zoom do all that processing cleans up a lot of things, makes a lot of things sound better than they were before. We've seen this in our panelists. Some panelists have some background noises and everything else, and they didn't invest in a mix pre with noise assist, which is expensive. And Zoom will do most of that for them. Just take out the little sounds in the background and everything else. So there's definitely at first I was like always having everyone turn original sound on, but we've had lots of participants in a lot of events where we've said, they sound better without that. If we send out, like the recent kit that we send out was with mix pre's, all with noise assist preset for it, then we have them turn it on because we know that we have something that's at least as good as Zoom doing correction for us. So it just depends on what the what you're sending out or what you're using as far as what you want to use. But if you're a musician or even a speaker who has a proper kit, it means that you have a good mic, you've got good preamps, you've got a quiet location, you're absolutely going to sound better with turning all those things on. If you're a musician, you're absolutely going to sound better. Your cutoff is, instead of 8K or 6 or 8K, it's 16K where it drops off with the new settings. And so it's definitely worth using the new settings, but only if with great power comes great responsibility.
How are they going to get the Oscars in their hands? That's what I want to know.
Oh, you're still going back to that?
How are they going to get the Oscars?
I don't know. I don't know how. I think this is the Emmys. I don't think it's the Oscars. I think this is for the Emmys.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I guess they'll deliver it. It'll be like a little CG version. Go ahead, Lawrence.
So yeah, I was thinking it's for students to send in individual recordings of instruments or singing. Would it be worth it? Because they're just going to record it with their phones or with their laptops. In that case, should I use high fidelity music mode or?
They're gonna, but are they going to? Well, yeah, absolutely. If you're going to record, are you just reviewing it and then they're actually recording it on something else?
Well, they send it in, and then we make them those virtual concerts where we combine them in one, and we mix all the audio into one big virtual choir or. But
that source is going to come from Zoom.
No, it's individual movies the kids send in. They film. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm confused here. No, it's not coming from Zoom. Yeah, I'm confused. But they were thinking of playing live, which will never work. Yeah, I'm confused.
It can work with a global click track, but it's not. There's no app that I've seen that does it very well. We've talked about making them ourselves, but everybody has to be on a global click track for it to work, and it won't be perfect. Because the variance in everybody's connections will keep on going back and forth. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Not only that, but also if there's any type of hiccups in the internet, then all of a sudden you're playing on the 4, and then next thing you know, you're on the 4 like 4 measures later because it's trying to keep up with what's going on. So it's best to record at the source. You can also make a recording from Zoom and then compare the two, but it's best to just do the recording at the source.
But we are obsessed with making it work. One of the things that we do here is we try to, when someone's birthday, in the panel, we try to sing them happy birthday, and we're getting better at it each time of trying to actually. The first couple have been disasters, but we do it anyway. There's the first step is getting us all, the goal is to get us all to where we're singing at the same time, and then we'll start breaking into harmonies and all these other things. But we're working through it. But all you can do is experiment. I have an idea around it. I keep on meaning to do it. I'm close to doing it. Maybe even as close as tomorrow or next week. We'll give a shot of a little test. We got to wait for somebody's birthday. Anyway, next question.
Keyword there is try to sing. Next one is Matt Cole. I need to do a Zoom meeting in a location with shady internet. I'm comparing a LiveU in data bridge mode and a Teradek Link Pro bonded cellular router. Anyone have any experience or preference with either?
The problem you'll have with anything that's bonded is jitter. So anytime you bond your internet connections, there's a jitter that goes on because they're all slightly different. And so it's the sum of all of those jitters. And so real-time communication, we have found, doesn't work very well. You're better off with just a MiFi. And you can get really powerful When I say a MiFi, you can get kind of industrial grade cellular that have like 5 antennas. They're not 5 transmitters. They're just 5 antennas, and they're kind of big fins, and they sit in the back. And those will get as good a signal as you're going to get. Then what I would do is the best thing to do is if you have a couple people that go to the location, and if you have a couple people who have on Verizon and on AT&T and T-Mobile or whatever, figure out which service provider is the most powerful. It's almost always Verizon, but not always. So Verizon is generally the most powerful of all of them all the time. But it can be AT&T. It's almost never T-Mobile. But when it is, it's amazing. Like so T-Mobile, because no one's using it. Anyway, so sorry. I know that they're the third highest or whatever, and we used to work for them. I mean, I felt bad because they'd always talk about it. We were like, oh, T-Mobile never works. Anyway, so but in the sense that we work with lots and lots of modems on LiveUs, we were able to see a lot of those things. But again, if you look at the PEP link that's here, when you start to bond those, you're going to have problems, with real-time communication. For streaming, they work great because you have buffers and you have other things. So the PEP link stuff is stuff that we've used a lot. We had it built into our truck so we could just turn it on and have internet as needed. So they work great as far as bonding for streaming. Real-time communication will break up a lot. In that environment, you're better off with a single cell provider than you are trying to bond multiple cells, in my opinion. Go ahead, Baishu.
Yeah, just one comment on that, basically, that you might not want to use the router for bonding, but you could have it as a hot failover. Mm-hmm. So you have a second connection ready to just fail over to it, and Zoom does handle that reasonably well. I had done it a few times, that you have it set up for failover. So if the main connection drops suddenly, you don't have to physically, it doesn't depend on Mac OS or Windows OS to handle it for them. It happens at the front end, especially if you have multiple connections going at the same time.
The other thing you can do is, if you can persuade the location to let you put a PEP link in as the QoS right from the WAN. So we'll take your internet, and then we'll combine it. Don't say bond, just say combine it with the cellular, and then we'll hand it back to the house. Now, what you do is you pass the wired connection to your show, and you pass the cellular connection to the house. And so they still have internet. It's a little spotty, it's a little weird, but you have all of the wired connection. And I have to say, I've done that many times. That is, in fact, that is a very classic thing. I've ruined it now because I told you all my secret, and now if I go to your building, you won't let me do it. But it's getting something. We've learned that if people have no internet, then they get upset. But if they have some, they just blame the Wi-Fi and they blame the internet and they blame everything else. And by the time they figure out that it's you, that the event's gone and you're out of there and your hardware's gone and everything else. And so you have to just give them back at least a trickle. So having a bond, some kind of cellular that's providing something for the house, and you can do that with the PEP links. You can do it with Meraki. You can do it with a bunch of other things where you can decide what connections are going to what ports. Go ahead, Vipul.
One needs to be careful when using cell services, especially for this kind of live event. And if there are many people going to turn up there, and if everybody is going to use the cell service, it's going to be a chaos. We had a very bad experience with that.
Yeah,
we had an event. We used LiveU. We had an event in 2011 in New Jersey. There was a groundbreaking ceremony of a temple, and our LiveU simply couldn't work because there were 3,000 people live streaming the event on their own Verizon. So it's going to be a challenge.
Really, any more than a couple hundred, you run the risk of saturating the cell tower. Yeah. So the cell towers can only handle so many connections, and you can run the risk. It's actually why there's locations, like for instance, Las Vegas tends to be a really bad look, really, really bad. You'll see all your bars, but you won't be getting any service because you can get to it, but it doesn't have enough bandwidth to manage all of the requests. And so it doesn't matter how many bars you have. It has to do with the fact that the cell service is completely overwhelmed. So you do have to take that into account. I worked on a lot of events, big political events, where they have the press comes in and there's like 20 live views, and then there's 6,000 people, and you're like, none of this is going to work, And I usually get brought in as a fixer, and I don't bring a LiveU. I just bring a sat truck. I just run a little line out to the sat truck, like I'm not playing this game, so like it just, sat trucks are not that expensive, if you find the right people. It just, but I'm just like, enough. All right, the sat truck will always work. All right, not always. Heavy rain, but a C-band will always work. All right, next question.
Chris Comfort, our own Chris Comfort from the panel, says, of my microphones, and he mentions a Beta 87A, an AT4040, a Rode NTG2, which might be the best for recording a grand piano? This is a most bang for the buck thing.
Brian?
So I would first go to the Audio-Technica and then the Shure, not the Rode, being it's a shotgun. The next question is what kind of music you're recording, because once you decide what mics you're using, where you're going to place them, for me, would depend on the kind of music I'm recording, whether it's classical, jazz, or rock, and even on a grand piano, is it a big grand or a small grand? All of that changes everything. And then the environment you're in. If I was doing classical, I'd often place them at a distance with the lid wide open and catch the reflection, but that's only going to work if you're in a really quiet environment. So there's all these variables in there, but I'd work with your with the AT and the Shure to start. If that's all you've got.
Yeah,
I'd agree. Go ahead, Victor.
So if you have 2 of the AKGs, that would be ideal. But if you only have 1, just practice placing the microphone in different locations throughout the soundboard of the piano. Because it's going to make a big difference as to what you're picking up. Make sure it's not too close, because you probably want a little of the room noise. So, do several recordings to get the sound that you're looking for. And I think that AKG works.
Time is an issue also, though. So very quickly, Zoom H4n placed back in the room to get the stereo field, but also feeding the singer's mic into one, which would be another one of the Beta 87s. And then whatever I'm putting in over top of the piano, kind of under the lid, I have freedom to do that, but not a lot of time to practice. So it's kind of like they're going to get what they get. But recording 17 songs in 3 days, opera, 1 pianist and 1 singer at a time.
Is there any room PA?
Upright or a grand piano?
And the other thing that and Victor, your noise floor is really high and you are really quiet. I'm not sure why. Or is it you, or?
Could be me.
Oh, no, it's Chris. Your noise floor is really high. And it's not Victor, it's Chris. You have a very high noise floor. The thing to remember also is when you go through that kind of effort of those number of days, that renting mics is not expensive. Like microphones themselves are not expensive to rent. And we want to think about the opportunity cost of, we have this talent for this amount of time. Is there somewhere we can find $150 or $200, which is about what it'll cost to rent all the right mics to do that? So we can use the mics that we have, but if we can get a couple $100 to aggregate to get mics that are really built for this, a lot of them are $50 a day, $75 a day, maybe even less. Especially now. Mics are pretty inexpensive to get to. So I would think about that as far as renting. You don't have to go out and buy really expensive mics to rent them and use them. I think, that just think through that, because there's many times when I have not invested as much as I should have. I caught, I'll play it at some point. I had to do a lot of cleanup. A friend of mine, Chiwanizo Morare from Zimbabwe, I didn't get a very good recording of just this magical performance. Just an amazing performance that she had. And it way down on the noise floor. I wasn't getting the right output. I didn't have enough time. I didn't give myself enough time to set up. I got there too late, captured it. Now I've cleaned it up and it sounds like kind of like a 50s recording, from the radio. So I still have it. There's an album version that isn't as good. And she passed away in 2013. So never going to get that back, and I think about that almost every time I think about recording, is that if I'm going to get these great artists in and I get that opportunity, I want to make sure that I capture it at the level that I can. Jeffrey and then Victor.
2 things. First of all, if you have time at the beginning, set up all 3 microphones and see how they actually sound in the setup. But also, if you have the ability, why not set up all the microphones and have them record separately? That way you get every single capture from those microphones that you have, and possibly you possibly will find out a gem, because there's still a lot of unknowns that we don't know about.
And go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, if I let myself think about this, it would be completely overwhelming, because they're asking me to do video and audio, but make it look like almost like a music video style, like artistic level wise and video cinematic wise, as a single person, doing the job of about 10 people. And so, not complaining at all. I'm just trying to like really like mitigate big mistakes so I can give them as much as I can for as little as they have to budget for.
Well, and just remember though that there's also post.
Oh yeah.
So what happens is that you don't get. I had an event literally yesterday where I couldn't hear. There was a little bit of a scratching on the mic, and when I listened to the raw copy, I was like, "Oh, that's 2 days of work of something that was a quick edit. It was going to take 2 days to clean. It's not that I can't do it. We had a local record from a mix pre, and I've got the data, but it's going to take some time to fix that, and that's, and that was just me not asking someone to move the mic forward 2 inches, because I thought it looked nice. I was like, oh, I don't hear anything, and it looks really nice the way it is, and let's do that. I should have done that.
Well, even that is really good, useful information. Never mind getting other mics. It's just like remembering to like listen to each thing and make sure there's no blatant problems. Like, like the mic stand isn't up against the body of the piano.
And especially if you're capturing this in pieces with individuals, being able to play it back and know that you got it, that it's in the can. You have them there for that moment. When they play that thing, listen to it, make sure that it's there before you let them go. Because once you let them go, you're going to have to fix this in post. And that could be, instead of an extra 15 minutes, it's an extra day and a half, kind of thing. And so just always think about, fix it in post is great when you've got budget. It's not great when you don't. Victor?
If you can go the rental route, a pair of AKG 451Cs in an XY pattern would do you fine. And right now, a lot of the rental companies in New York City want the business, and they will work with you. Trust me, they will work with you to get you a good price.
They're very aggressive right now. Go ahead, Sky.
So I didn't hear how many cameras you had, but if you do have post-production, capture as many angles as possible and shoot it all in 4K, because if you're delivering in 1080, at least you've got some push-in possibilities.
That's exactly the plan. We already talked about that yesterday. I have 2 4Ks, and they gave me another.
Yep.
He handed me this yesterday to play with, because this is their camera. So I'm gonna that'll be the third camera, and then shallow lens on one of them, and then
there you go.
Cut back and forth, and artificial cropping and panning. So
there you go.
Good.
Awesome. But make sure to get you want your three major shots. You want your wide, medium, and close. So, but now you've got 8 or 6 possibilities with 3 cameras. So, ding, 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 ding.
Next, Courtney.
And if you can operate the camera, get a mini jib to add, height changes, which really adds a lot of production volume.
I wish. I'd be lucky if I can grab the camera with my gimbal and do it. Just to, literally 45 minutes per song over 3 days. So 3 6-hour days, 45 minutes per song. So
are these long arias or something?
It's an what's that?
Are they long arias or something?
No, I mean, I think we're talking about 2 to 5 minutes per song. I mean, they're not long. But it's all opera, but they're shorter pieces.
And you asked somebody in Discord, I bet there's somebody in New York City that would help you, that would be happy to help.
I'm sure you.
Right.
Sure you could get
getting the budget
from the
though, also.
community.
I mean, I'm barely getting paid at this point, so it's like, yeah,
I know a lot of people are looking for experience. If I was in New York, I'd be there in a New York minute.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Go ahead, Guy.
I was going to say the same thing. Lean on your network. If you know of anybody, this can be an opportunity to let them use a new piece of gear, because, man, there's something about having a decade of experience, being able to just drop a mic right there. Boom. I mean, people are surprised when I say just move that over there, move that over there. And then it's like, bam, in 30 seconds, a lot of stuff is fixed that they were having problems with. So that experience is worth it. And you just don't want to get your reputation burned over, the expectation being too high for bringing in.
I try to mitigate their expectations a little bit. Their example videos were like full-on music videos, and I'm like, that they probably spent 8 to 10 to 12 hours on that one song,
right?
As opposed to 16 hours on 17 songs. So,
Yep. Okay, let's move to the next question. We're running out of time.
Tony Mobley asks, I thought today was supposed to be the $350 solution for Zoom. Did he get the wrong day?
We just didn't promote it enough, and I know that I couldn't change my system because I have an event right after this, and I was just like, I can't make this shift today. So we'll find another one. I apologize. We will get another day where we do that. Next question.
Next question is Perry Miller. I'm interested in editing video taken on my iPhone for instructive as well as pleasure of sharing with family and friends. Is it best if I invest in learning to edit video in iMovie or Lumafusion? Ease of use is important.
Well, you know, so Terry, what would you say about this? What should people use?
Well, I mean, obviously I have some bias here since I own Lumafusion, but I would say, you know, it depends on how crafted you want your story to be and how unique you want it to be. So if you want to edit something quickly, use a template, have it wow, you know, grandma or grandpa. That's great to use iMovie. But if you really want to craft a story, be able to layer your audio the way you want, mix your audio, do a real crafted piece, then definitely Lumafusion will provide that for you.
And I think that, and one of the reasons we brought Terry on earlier this week is that on mobile, you just want to remember that if you use iMovie, you're going to cap out pretty quickly. You know, you're gonna get good at it, and then you have nowhere to go. And so you spend all that time getting good at all the weird little things that iMovie does, and you got good at squeezing something out of it, but then you have to relearn something completely different again.
Yeah, because you're going to squeeze the same thing out every time you use it, or, you know, at least every 10 times it's going to look similar.
So yeah, and then a lot of people say, well, you can go to Final Cut, but then that takes you off the mobile platform. So, you know, learning something that is, if you're gonna stay native to a mobile platform, you know, I would lean towards Lumafusion because it's going to let you keep on scaling, you know, with what you're doing. Next question.
Next question comes from John Pruitt. If I wanted to test my audio to verify I have good sound for a meeting like this, what is a good and economical way to test it myself?
The easiest way to test it, I test it in QuickTime. Like when I want to listen to my mic, I open up QuickTime, say make movie or make audio, and I hit record. And I usually say the thing that I always say, which is, we are glad that O find us so pleasant with us, is present in your pains we thank you for. So I have a little tape that I play, and I know that 20 seconds, I know how it should sound on a mic because I've done it for the last 30 years. And so so I just run that, and then I move forward. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
You can always go into Skype and do a test call from there. It's always good to actually be able to record and then hear, not hear as you're talking, because it's a lot different in the sound. The other thing is, depending on whether you're on Mac or PC, I'm not sure. If you're on PC, you've got this thing called Voicemeeter Banana that's absolutely free, and I know we'll laugh over a banana thing, but the whole point is that as long as you don't change anything in that mixing console, and that's the important thing, don't make any adjustments, you should be able to, it has an option to record right there. It's got a little tape. You hit the record button, you talk into it, and you do something like Alex said, something solid for at least 10 seconds, and then listen to yourself and hear how you sound, and that'll be a good test.
Go ahead, TJ.
Zoom also has the built-in ability to test your own microphone and hear yourself back. It's a very short recording, but at least you will hear. And I swear we had heard wasn't there somebody mention a free online audio meter type of deal at one point?
I go Stephen and then Roscoe.
Also in Zoom, you can go in, start a session, record it, then watch and listen.
Okay, and we're gonna move on. Next question.
Next question. Chris Comfort says, is isopropyl alcohol in a spray bottle safe for cleaning microphones between each use for multiple singers?
Any opinion about that? Go ahead, Courtney, and then Roscoe.
It depends on the microphone, but I would stay away from sprays that could get inside the works and contaminate the capsule. Use an alcohol-based wipe to wipe off the surfaces, and you'll probably be fine, you know, because if anything you can touches the alcohol, that's going to serve the purpose of disinfecting it.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, at our university at peroxide, there is a peroxide-based spray, and there's another one that's and I said no way to the peroxide, but isopropyl alcohol would not meet my university specs.
Yeah. Bill?
Even worse than that, some things are sold under the banner of rubbing alcohol. They're often got oils mixed into them to make a massage kind of circumstance, and it's horrible. Stay away from anything labeled rubbing alcohol.
Next question.
Next question is James Babbitt. Atmos sounds amazing on an iPad Pro. Is there a good Atmos system for use with a laptop computer?
So I will say, I've been watching a lot of Atmos footage recently, and the iPad is amazing. Like it's kind of this, I don't even know how that works. It feels like it's going all the way around you, and you know, I can't quite figure out how it projects it in there. Now, I will say that most of the 2020 laptops also are pretty darn good. Maybe not quite as good as the iPad, but they're pretty good. They've got mics going out both sides, and they're doing this projection thing. And the one that's the most disconcerting for me is that Blue Jeans has Dolby voice in it. And what I didn't realize is that Blue Jeans is putting the individuals in the meeting into Atmos, like into some version of Atmos. So you hear the voices, like when we go talking to you, you hear voices over here and then voices over there. And it's like moving people into the space, which is a very interesting experience. Anyway, so I would say that I think that the newer laptops, the 2020 laptops, Apple laptops, will do a fair bit of that. I do not have the AirPod Pros. I'm going to get them in the next week or two, but I didn't really feel like I needed them until now. With iOS 14, there has been a big update, and all I've heard is has anyone tested the iOS 14 with Atmos? Is it as good as people say?
It is a kind of an odd thing at first. You're just wondering how you're getting the sound stage out of a set of earphones, and it takes a moment to kind of readjust your monitoring things. But I think it's magic.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I'm trying to get my Tidal to work in my living room, which turns out to be really Tidal. They're not very smart. Anyway, so they make it so hard to register, and this is why people I think are fighting Apple's like 30%, because Tidal did all this work to work around it, and I'm about to cancel because I can't figure out how to get it to work on my Apple TV. If they just let me order it through Apple TV, I would just order it and use it and pay for it and everything else. And so but I really want to listen to more music that way. I've listened to a bunch of test stuff in theaters where there's tons of speakers and you get to listen to music. And when you hear music all around you, it's like a whole different experience than it was in stereo. It's way more different. Surround is way more different than the difference between stereo and surround is way more impressive than the difference between mono and stereo, in my opinion. Like it's a completely different experience. And so I've become fascinated, obviously, with that process. And so, but yeah, those are the two. That's what I would say for those. And I would definitely suggest exploring it.
For me, it was one of those ideas when you think, they've got all these accelerometers in there and they understand how to process audio really well. Marrying those two ideas seems so simple and obvious afterwards, but it was only afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I want to do is take some of the sample who did the sample file in Logic? What was the sample file that was
Billie Eilish.
Oh, Billie Eilish. Yeah. I want to take that one and just move it into Atmos as a kind of a work experiment. And Victor, you should do some stuff into Atmos just to play with it.
I just ordered those earbuds as well. I hadn't needed them until now because
So I'm gonna start experimenting with taking songs and putting them in just on my own, just to kind of play with the idea. We're gonna have one of our offices will have an Atmos setup in it, so we're gonna be able to kind of play with the sound to see how that works. Anyway, next question.
Craig Hibbard says, so many of the Zoom polls are silly and irritating. Any suggestions for good polling questions?
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
If the question is relevant to what you're doing, then it's not going to be silly. If it's not relevant, it's going to be silly.
Yeah, Jeffrey?
That sounds like a good polling question right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we oftentimes I'm going to be working on having more of us kind of involved during each one of these episodes, where people can. I may turn in having one person as the poll captain that just asking polls all the time, but the key is keeping them part of the conversation. So if we're going to talk about something for a little while, what you want to do is get people's feedback, during that time. So thinking about what those polls are. I think what makes them silly is that someone thinks of the polls before the show. And they're not really relevant to the things that are there, and they're just goofy. They're trying to get interaction. Interaction's super important, and so social media folks are being told constantly, you got to get interaction, have some polls, but it's not integrated with the conversation. So then it just seems silly. Go ahead, TJ.
Well, you would ask the panel if how many here had played with the earbuds. And that would be a great poll. You could ask a larger group to get that type of thing. So bringing it into the conversation.
Yep, absolutely. So it's hard for us to have the conversation and make the polls. And so I'm going to expand that team a little bit so that we have people like thinking about polls that we can put up there in Makana or other things. I think the interaction is great, and I think that it's important. And anywhere we can find interaction, polls are one thing. Obviously, the Q&A is another. Kinetic integration is really the one that I've told the story before, but we connected a flamethrower to emojis, and people really enjoyed it. So if people can feel like they're in some way affecting the show, it's important. Right, next question.
Michael Vosbein asks, Weather Channel often places a reporter standing in 80-mile-per-hour winds, but we hear almost nothing of the storm. How are they doing this?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, so at first you will normally see an Electro-Voice RE50 in that circumstance, which happens to be a really good mic that you can use real close, and it's naturally pretty well baffled to that. They're also standing with their back to the wind. They generally have a positioning thing going on. And then I would imagine there's some low-end roll-off, because most of that nasty wind noise is the microphone doing a very low rumble. But there's nothing magic about it. It's a combination of a good mic, physics, and spatial awareness.
I know a lot of times in windy environments, we parked our truck between the wind and the reporter, so you don't see it, and you see a ton going past them, but the broadcast truck itself is on the wind side of the person, and it kills almost all of it. It's a really great effect because you see it all, and it looks like everything's falling apart, and but you don't get nearly the hit to the mic, and that combined with a good microphone and some roll off makes it almost crystal clear. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Same idea. They usually find the corner of a building, and the cameraman's actually in fairly calm, but what's going on in the background that gets totally seen by the camera.
Yeah, we've even had people when they had to do that. We had them step out because we'd cover them so that they wouldn't get rained on, but we'd have them step out and get wet and then step back into the thing so that it didn't look like they were all dry, because we had it all kind of a little cove for them to do the event or to do the hit. Yeah. So it's nothing. Everything you see is manufactured. You just have to get over it. Like as a viewer, you just have to realize there's none of it's real. I mean, it's all manufactured. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and if they're standing out in the actual rain rather than being protected, like everyone's saying, is one thing you have to remember before they go live. Take off, if you have a foam windscreen on the microphone, protect the microphone, take the foam windscreen and wring it out, because it'll become saturated with water if it's got a driving rain that's been hitting it for more than about 10 minutes.
And I admit, we do see reporters that want to be out there in the rain and see all the wind coming in, and in the control room, we just cringe. Like, we're just like, oh, let's just get out of this as fast as we can. Anyway, so next question.
Paul Wallace is in with any thoughts on the Zoom U22, U24, U44 mid-size mixers versus the Zoom H6 that Lauren Strobe is using, thinking of downgrading mixers from the Zoom LiveTrack L8 to one of these.
Any opinions about those? I don't know if anyone has one. See here. I don't think we have a lot of actual field use with those. So I think we'll have to keep moving. Next question.
Okay. Daniel Ray Ville, I'm going to mispronounce your last name poorly, so I'm not going to try it. Suggestions for mic audio online rental houses or Shagrid style site to test out some of the mic options available.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Location Sound, up in Hollywood, been around for years. Some of the best equipment you're going to find to be able to rent. Location Sound.
And do they ship it? Does the Location Sound ship gear?
Yeah, the rental gear they will.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Courtney.
Also, in Hollywood and in several other, Nashville and Atlanta and other locations, True Audio is a good source for rental equipment as well. Production equipment.
What I will say on the other side of that is that if you rent from VER, just make sure to rent an extra one. Like I needed 2 416s next week, and I ordered 3. I was like, I'll rent 3 of them because I just don't know how. I mean, VER is heavy use, not a lot of QA. when it goes back out again. So just know that you have to, when you're renting gear in general, you want to rent at least 1 extra of everything. If it actually matters. Next question.
Trevor Walker is here with, what headset lav mic would you recommend to plug directly into the ATEM Mini Pro 3.5 millimeter connection? The other folks are mic'd with Rode Link lavs coming in over HDMI. I do not need to be wireless as I am operating the ATEM, but seem move too much for a fixed desktop mic. He must have a mic on a stand in front of him.
Directly in, I will say that while we generally are expensive friends, the ones that we've been really successful with are these pile mics that are like $15. So the pile mic, yeah, there's and we've had lots of trouble with other ones. So one of the things, by the way, I think that one of the issues, and I don't know if you got to the bottom of it, Sky, with that Sennheiser. Did you get to the bottom of what the issue was? Was it an actual connection?
It was the Countryman itself. I sent it back to your friends just down the road, and I talked to Rose yesterday, and she said, "Oh yeah, it was a bad cable." So
there you go. Monday,
I will have my Countryman back. There you
go. Because one of the things about that Sennheiser connection to remember is that it's a TRS with that screw in, which that screw in doesn't allow it to go in as far as it's designed to go in, and so I'm not sure if that would ever work well.
We will find out on Monday. Yeah. Find out on Monday now that we got the GoPro to stick it into.
Yep. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
One thing to keep in mind, because you did say headset mic combo, was that the ATEM Mini does not have a headphone jack out. So you'll have to do if you're bringing that lav in through the ATEM directly, then you're going to have to figure out a way to get the audio back.
Yeah, I don't see combo. Oh, I think it's just headset / lav mic. I think it's just I don't think there's a combo required.
I felt it being a little bit odd to make the clarification.
Yeah, anyway, next question.
Paul Wallace says, friend of mine, William Myers, wrote a gorgeous coffee table book about the life of the Dalai Lama. It's like a giant comic book. Is there a process to make this into a video with sound and effects and music? Anyone done anything like this?
Yeah, Martin Scorsese spent a lot of time on that, and he came out with a movie called Kundun. Sorry, I just had to say it. It was like, for those of you who didn't see Kundun, a couple notes about it.
This guy Scorsese any good at this?
He turns out he's pretty good at it.
Oh, really?
He's got some skill. I think he might go places. He's a young guy, and he's got some crazy ideas. But I think he might actually. Kundun's one of my favorite movies. So it's a really it's an incredible movie. I'm just going to use Paul's question here to state that it is now back out on Blu-ray. So what happened was that they put it out, and the Chinese went absolutely crazy that it was out, and basically almost blocked its distribution, kept it off the shelves for 20 years. And for whatever reason, they've decided to go ahead and put it on Blu-ray. I highly recommend. You can't find it on any of the digital platforms because everyone's too afraid of the Chinese, which, by the way, the one reason I'm not sure if I should say this, but I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to see. I'm even afraid of the Chinese. So anyway, the one reason I'm not that plussed about TikTok getting blocked is that I think that the Chinese are a danger to the world. So I'll go ahead and say it. So and we're in trouble, and we should stop everything that they're doing, and we should stop building things there. We should stop trading with them. I'm just going to go ahead and just say that because it's just they're bad. not the people, the government. So anyway, so so Kundun was blocked for a long time. I actually got to talk to someone that was deeply connected to that from the Dalai Lama side. and I asked, I said, so how accurate was it? Like, how accurate was Kundun compared to from the Dalai Lama's perspective? How did he feel about it? And he said he felt like it was completely accurate, like just because there was a lot of interaction with the Dalai Lama and the Dalai Lama's team. And he said it was completely accurate, except for one thing. He said, the Dalai Lama said, I never walked that slow. Ever. like at that age, I was always moving, and he said, every time he sees the movie, it was just like, I would never walk that slow at that age, like he was always moving fast. And so, anyway, I would highly recommend that Blu-ray. Paul, did you want to say something else about this book specifically?
Yeah, it's a gorgeous book. I mean, look at this. And I think it would make an incredible video, audio, music experience. So I was just wondering, I'm looking for somebody to help me present this to William and see if this would be a project that would interest him. But, there's got to be talent out there with music and audio and narration that would bring this book to life. I just wondered if anybody has done anything like this.
You're off mic, way off mic. I don't know exactly what's going on there.
I just wondered if anybody's done anything.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's lots of people who have taken books and a lot of it's getting, the big thing is you either have to scan the book or get the original artwork that you can do kind of you do the kind of Ken Burns thing. The more complicated Ken Burns thing is that you pull everything into plates, you pull everything into cards and then do pushes on the cards. That takes a little bit of post to do that. We've done a lot of that. It's actually really fun. You have to, if the original artwork already has layers, it's great. If it doesn't, there's a lot of paint fix that you have to do to kind of create the parallax. But doing that along with the reads is really compelling as little videos. I mean, I would highly recommend it. Terry, you were going to say something?
I mean, I agree. You need the original artwork. You probably can't scan a printed book high enough quality to, even if it's a high quality book, scanning it will provide you a lot of noise. So if you can find the artist and
seeing
the
it,
original
and seeing it as a comic book, I think that you'd really have to work with the author to get the original plates, and then you'd probably want to get them with and without the text.
Well, and then there's the copyright thing. So you do need to find the original artist, but I think it would be beautiful. And I've done stills where you're cutting out different parts of the image and moving them at different rates to create a three-dimensional effect. And it is really fun and really cool thing to do.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So one thing that I did in the early 2000s was a lot of comic stuff. I've drawn comic slides and things like that. One of the projects I worked on at that time was actually taking comic frames and scanning them in and then just kind of putting slight movements to them. So like, for instance, if they did say hello, you got the hello back there. Think of it as, in that case, think of it as a stop animation. So you want to look at a stop animation artist to be doing stuff like that. But if you're creating from scratch, the best thing would be to, if you're trying to go from the book, start at the book author and see if it's okay with them to do the movie off of it.
Without the original artwork, it won't go anywhere. You'll need to have it in layers. Next question.
Be fun clearing the copyright on that. The next question from A. Mitchell: does anyone use the Beta 87A often for a lot of things other than vocals, and if so, what and why?
I think that's what we use it for.
I think it makes a good hammer, I'm told.
There we go.
The 635 makes a good hammer too, as does the SM58.
Really quick, we're going to try to clean these questions out here. Go ahead. Next question.
Tony Mobley: I know hubs are not recommended, but is there a brand to use if you have to? USB hub particularly.
Go ahead, TJ.
I have several Anchor USB hubs. They work great. And for a larger dock, I use a CalDigit.
I think the CalDigits are the ones that we were having trouble with slippage, on the issues with the ATEM Mini, if I remember correctly. I think
I don't run my ATEM through the CalDigit.
No, I'm saying, but I think that those are the ones that were specifically problematic for us. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I would highly recommend not doing the USB-C, but collecting all your USB-As and then putting it through whatever dock you choose.
Next question.
Ashadev says, what apps does one use to edit Atmos sound? I'm assuming it's Atmos.
There are tools. Most of the major editing tools will let you do it. So Logic, Pro Tools. I think those are probably the two most popular. There's other ones that are. I believe there's one. I do not use it, and you should ask this again when you see Mickey. So I didn't realize how much surround work that Mickey does. So the person to probably ask when you, if you see Mickey on here, he happens to be not here today. He's probably listening. Maybe we can just talk about Mickey for a while until he shows up. Anyway, so Mickey is going to be the right answer. But the two most popular, I believe, are Logic, Pro Tools, and I believe, and I want to say is it Nuendo, or there's another, that's another, popular platform to put those in. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, that's Steinberg basically. Nuendo is their main DAW. It's pretty popular here, especially in India. Pro Tools is there, but Nuendo is really strong.
Yeah. Those are the three biggest ones that I know of that are being used. I mean, that's probably 70-80% of the production. Go ahead, Stephen.
And Audition now has it too.
Yep. And I'm a little obsessed now. So anyway, I think we'll talk more about it. We'll see if we can get some guys on to talk about it. All right, next question. Last question.
I'm sorry. For a background RGB panel with adjustable colors, what are the affordable alternatives to the Nanlite MixPanel 60? And the one I use and behind me most days is called a G1S, but there are a lot of them out there. I got to turn it on because I haven't used it today.
The main thing to consider there is just the cycle rate. So remember that cheaper ones, the little DJ ones what do you got? Can you show yours, Bill?
Yeah, it's this one. It just sits on top of a stand. It's real small. It's rechargeable. Lasts me usually a couple of days. Multicolor. You have a whole spectrum, and it's the branding on the back just says G1B. I got it off, or G1S. I got it off of Amazon. Pixel might be the company.
Looks like it's about $70.
Yeah, I think something like that. Yeah.
Yep. So that's
behind me where my chair blocks it, and that's my rim light.
The only reason that my solution with the MixPanel 60 was affordable was because it was already sitting in my office. Like I would never use that as the one that I would use for everything. That would be crazy overkill. I would buy other Nanlites that are less expensive than that to do that. So the only reason I used it, I just want to make sure, I want to clarify that the only reason I was using it was because it was the right price, which was that it was already sitting here and I could just set it up. But yeah, that I think Bill's looks great. Remember that as you move it away, it'll get less pointy and just more. But you need so little light. I think that works well. All right, time to shift gears. A little late, 2 minutes. Sorry about that. We're going to switch to education. And so if you have, we have our educators. Let's bring them in.
Alex, I'll tap out for the education portion. I got other stuff, so you can drop me to panelist.
Oh, great. Fine. Be that way.
Sorry.
Right, TJ, have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, TJ.
I also will have to leave, so I'll make room for some more educators.
Okay.
So I will.
Thanks, Courtney.
I will too. I have a band to play in. Actual live music. Awesome.
Rock on, Jeffrey.
Sing happy birthday for me on Zoom.
And we are now moving to, I know some people are still throwing some questions in. We are now moving to education. So we want to look at education-based questions. Got a lot more.
Guess my question for Emily: Are the leaves turning in the East Coast? Hello.
Yeah, I drove down the thruway this week and they were red and orange.
So if we have any other educators that are that want to become part of this conversation, go ahead and raise your digital hand. Otherwise, we're going to we'll go ahead and get started. Let's check everybody's mic real quick. Let's see, Roscoe, we already checked yours. Emily, you sounded good already. Go ahead and talk a little bit more.
Good morning. I brought my friend Stevie. He's down here on the screen.
Hey, Stevie.
So Stevie's with us. So he's also a really cool educator.
Awesome.
Hopefully my level sounds good. And he's a total geek when it comes to technology. So he's probably going to sound really good too.
Stevie, go ahead. Go ahead and let's do your mic check.
Hey, everybody, just making sure I'm here. Thanks, Emily, for the invite. I'm really excited to join the conversation. So
awesome. You're coming in maybe just a touch hot.
High?
But yep.
All right, let's just adjust that out a little bit.
And what you're trying to do is if you see there's a meter, it's about 3 seconds behind. So you have to kind of talk through it
Gotcha.
To get there. And then you're trying to hit somewhere near 20.
Gotcha. All right, I'm seeing it over there now. Let's adjust this out a little bit.
And then just talk a little bit, and then we'll see it.
No problem. All right, is that sounding a little bit better now? As
Yeah, that's
kind
great.
of step back a little bit. Okay, good. Thank you.
Go ahead, Chris Clark. Hey, Chris.
Good morning, everyone from Tempe, Arizona. It looks like I'm around
hitting it right
20.
on. Yep, that looks great.
Thank you. Glad to
Bruce,
be here.
good to have you. Bruce.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nate from Naples, Florida. Do I look, I'm in 19, 20, 18, somewhere
Yep.
in that area? Okay.
Looks great. Aaron.
Good morning, Erin Graham from Boston, 3rd grade teacher, doing all remote teaching this year.
Little low, if you can bring it up just a little bit.
All righty, how about that? Good morning. Nice and cool here in Boston. 3rd grade. I'm happy to join the panel to help with some elementary questions if I can.
That's perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, let's Bill, let's get to the education questions.
Okay, let me move some over here. And the first one is going to be
Whoops, you went to active rather than, hold on, let's see, hosts.
I'm sorry.
There we go.
Okay. Teacher in classroom with TAs, small breakout room sessions guided. Can you recommend a headset to block out the other people in the room? Over-ear headset with mic and possible noise cancellation.
The headset that we've all been talking about that is hard to get right now is the Pile. The Pile mic is a relatively cost-effective one. It'll go into a lot of things. Your total investment is about $30 with the USB connection. It is I think a lot of us have I think I have one sitting here. There's a couple different ones that the biggest challenge when you try to look for these headset mics is finding one that has an 1/8 inch that is not a Sennheiser. So the problem with the Sennheiser connections is that they won't go all the way in because that little screw that's designed to screw onto a Sennheiser transmitter keeps the connection from going all the way into whether it's a mic input on your computer. If you're on a PC, it'll have a mic input. There you go. That's the 1/8 inch that we're looking for there. So what you're looking for is a 3.5 millimeter jack or an 1/8 inch jack that is that doesn't have a little screw on the Sennheiser mount. There are very few. There are very few that have that. So the Pile is one that has it. The dual, we made the mistake both here and on Twitter. I made the mistake of recommending the Pile dual ear. So we recommended it here. I put it on Twitter. Now it's sold out until November. So you can get the single ear is still out. You can get the single ear, and then what we do with the single ears is we get a little bit of surgical tape. And right here, you put it up over your ear, you get it to where you want it, and you just tape it right to your chin, right back here, and it'll keep it in place. Otherwise, it moves all over the place. It's why we like the dual ear. Some people don't like the dual ear because they've got big braids. My wife has big braids, and so it doesn't work for her. There's other reasons to not, big hair tends to make it harder. So they like the single ear, but the single ear will tend to move around. And also with a smaller head, this one's adjustable. This is a dual ear, this Countryman. But on the single ear, you have to basically bend it down here and over. Do you want to show that, Lawrence? There's the single ear there. Yeah, so there's the single ear, and it's just a little trickier. It's a little trickier because it's harder to adjust the length of that boom. And what you want with that boom when you're working with it is you want it to stop just short of your mouth. Otherwise, you'll get all kinds of air and other things that are hitting it. So you just want it to you want it to get to about there. So you're trying to figure out how to manipulate it to that point. Go ahead, Chris.
Emily, are you looking for a two-way solution for ear and mic?
Yeah, so the room is like there's 3 or 4 people in the room working with small groups of kids, and they have, they got district headsets that are like pillows. They're not cups, so they can hear everybody else in the room working with kids, and it's distracting. And then the mic picks up the other people in the room. So it can be a little, they're turned facing the walls now, four corners kind of thing, trying to minimize the sound, but it's a special education room. So there's a lot of repeating and getting a little louder to get the attention of the kid on the other end. So we're just looking for something that can help them, you know, cancel out some of that noise in the room while they're working with their smaller group.
So part of that is like a full over ear.
So, and do they have a little
solution?
bit? So I guess the next question is, do they have a little budget because it's special ed to get something a little nicer? No.
You make me laugh. No, not really. Most of them are purchasing it on their own, but the TAs aren't going to purchase it. There's a little more money in the special ed, but right now the state's withholding 20% of the education budget because the federal government hasn't kicked in. So they're talking about reducing. We lost 50 TAs from one district on Friday. So they had to lay them off until the money comes through. So like asking for money is really difficult right now.
No, I'm just, so I will tell you again, so there's a couple things. In the inexpensive one, there is the pile mics, and then there are the, you know, getting some kind of over the ear, and these can be as cheap as, you know, $15. You're looking for like in ear. Yep. Those in ear. Then what I do is I use the little foam, you know, those in the other ear. So I just put one into one ear and I put that into the other ear so that I just cut everything else out. And that will get you a long way. The next step up from that is a big step. So those are the best, you know, little solutions. Now remember that there's gaming headsets that are $50 to $100 that are big, and they have a lot of noise cancellation, and they're designed for that. And so you're gonna have they're big cups, and I don't have a specific gaming one that I'd recommend, but those are fairly effective. And then the next step, so that you have the first step that I'm talking about is probably a $30 to $50 investment. The next step up is $50 to $150, which is the gaming headsets. At $300, there's a company called The Boom, the BOOM, The Boom. This is the company that builds headsets for Apache helicopters. So they make them $300. They have an 1/8" jack in, and they cut out. I used to have a convertible, and people would think I was in my office, you know, like with my top down while driving. You know, it has another speaker that goes out, and they've got, you know, they're picking up basically everything else and removing it from the system. And it does it really, really well. And so there's the Boom. And then in that same range, though, you have other things that require interfaces. So the Boom will still work with a phone. It'll still work with things that are simple. Then you have Sennheiser makes, you know, these basically, if you're looking for announcer headsets, those announcer headsets are what they wear at football games, big headsets with a mic, and they're in the 250 to 350 range. But they're going to have XLR. They come with a single cable, and they have an XLR and a 1/4 inch. And so you have to have an interface to interface with that. You know, like you have to have something that's going to go into your computer. So that's the, you know, from the $50 to the, you know, $450, $500 range. Those are the kind of, I would say those are the kind of steps. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah. Even with college kids, the most important thing is to have a break point. They will be working on something and they'll get excited and they'll get up. Sorry, my mic moved. They'll get up and they'll walk away with the headphones still on, and they'll yank all your equipment. So you got to have a break point in that automatically unplugs when they walk away. USB 3.5 doesn't matter.
One of these headsets we sent out as a kit, we lost one because the person got up and tore the cable. So anyway, next question. Did that answer your question, Emily, or get you closer? I don't know if it answered it, but
yeah, it does. I mean, we came up with all sorts of stuff. Like we were talking about putting earbuds in and then getting like lawnmower cans, you know, like the kind you are using your lawnmower, just to keep some of the noise down. But I didn't know if there was like some sort of, you know, the $50 range is probably most acceptable for these people. I mean, TAs make $12 to $15 an hour. Yep. So it's not like, you know, they're got a lot of spending money, but some of those options will work for us.
And also remember that the more you can do with their little stations, you know, the higher the walls are, the more just even carpet over them, you know, makes a difference. You know, really it's amazing how much that will cut down the amount of interaction. So like some lumber, you know, some literally particle boards and some carpet that are up higher than, 2 feet higher than they are around them, except for the back, will cut down more sound than almost anything else you do. Go ahead, Stevie.
Yeah, to add to that too, I was thinking the feel on the ear is also important because, yeah, some headsets great for me, but not great for you. So we've been having our teachers go in and like actually try them on, go to Best Buy or something before they buy, because, sending a blanket, like these work great for gaming, as you said, but after 4 or 5 hours of sitting here doing live streams, it gets a little taxing on the top of my ear. So definitely looking at the feel for the individual as well is important.
Yeah, so Sky.
Egg crates. They literally do the old ones that are cardboard. You put those up on the wall and to break up your sound for sound conditioning. So
I had a whole studio with it. And the thing you just have to be careful of is if you go to a restaurant, you can go to restaurants and they'll give you the egg crates, like especially a breakfast restaurant, and they're 18 the 18 ones or whatever, the 24s. You can get these in little squares and you can put them up all over, but you have to get a whole bunch of them. And then you have to inspect each one of them because you see these stains. If you see any stains on them, that means that some eggs broke on them, and it gets really smelly. So just know that you have to go through them to make sure you get only the ones that didn't have any breaks on them. Go ahead,
the price of free.
Yeah, exactly, Garrett. But it works. To Sky's, my first studio that I did it with, I literally did all the walls with egg crates, and it definitely made a big difference. Go ahead, Garrett. Oh, can't hear you, but your sync is perfect. Go ahead. Nope. Okay. Something's wrong there. All right. Next question.
Well, we have one in here next, but it's for the earlier hour. It's about Lumafusion. Do we want to hold off on that and focus?
Terry, are you going to be here tomorrow or just today?
Yeah, I can be here tomorrow.
Okay. We'll handle that tomorrow in the first hour.
Okay.
So perfect. All right.
So now we're going down to Chris Clark from.
This is how we trap Terry into coming every day. Like, oh, we got a Lumafusion question, and so we'll remove that one. But Jamali asked that. Please ask that again. All right.
Chris Clark, colleges that brought students to campus are accumulating growing infection numbers and recognizing that it can't control students off campus. In what directions are your local colleges and schools leaning for Plan B?
Are people seeing any movement here? I mean, it seems like a lot of them are. Plan B is sending everybody home. It's the what I would have thought of as Plan A. Anyway, go ahead, Emily.
So I just know this from the people who I work with in my office have students in local New York colleges that are experiencing like large numbers all of a sudden. And I know Cortland is now testing all the students, 500 students a day to kind of keep the levels down. So it's 500 students a day. I don't know how big the school is, but it's definitely bigger than 500 kids. And then I can't remember what the other school in New York is where the student goes, but I believe it's a SUNY one, and they're doing it every 2 weeks. They're testing all the students on campus, like on a rotation. So like everyone gets tested within 2 weeks, but we're all like, yeah, but then the next day you could be positive. So I'm not sure how effective that's going to be, but that's one of the things that they're starting to do here. As far as a Plan B, they've locked them in their dorms in Onteora, or not Onteora, what is it? Anyway, one of the SUNY schools, they've basically said they can't leave their dorms and then they have to take their classes online, but that doesn't keep the kids from leaving campus and coming back to campus, which is another issue altogether. And then the CDC's like, don't send them home because then they bring it back to their communities. So it's kind of like a catch-22 as far as they probably should have just stayed remote.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
So in summary, it's going fine.
So say that again.
So in summary, it's going fine.
Yeah.
Just as Alex predicted.
Exactly. I mean, for those of you who are just tuning in, I tweeted out, I don't know how many weeks ago, I was like, they're going to open it up and there's going to be a whole bunch of infections and they're going to close it back up again. And they're going to wish they'd spent the whole summer working on this. And it wasn't, it wasn't unpredictable. Like, this is like, it's not like, oh, there's this, into the insanity of being committed to something that is what you want to have happen, but is not connected to reality. And the reality is there was no way this was ever going to work, but they, I think that there's another tension that schools have is that more for colleges than K through 12 is a break in habit. if a whole bunch of people don't go to school, take the year off, which is, if I was a parent, I will flat out say, I know we have some college, instructors here and or professors and everything else that are here. If I was a parent, there is no way I would pay for this year. Like there's zero chance that I would pay $40,000 or $30,000. I would just say, just go do something, find yourself, or be at home and study and think about things and I think that kids should do that anyway. I think that I think going out and doing things for a year or 2 or 5, or in my case, 30, the thing is that go find yourself. And then when you know what you want, if I went back to school, I know what I'd want to do, right? If I for some reason had the opportunity to go back to school, I'd go back and I'd study art and coding, I'd study drawing and coding mostly. I think that would be, and I'd take some minors in cooking, like that. Like, to me, that would be useful. But the point is, I didn't know that when I just wandered around college for a while. And so I think that, and fortunately, I didn't spend a lot of money on it. I didn't have a lot of debt because I went to state schools because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to spend a lot of money trying to figure it out. And so I think that schools, though, I think the problem is they have people like me who I got busy with the rest of my life. I got halfway through school. I took a year off and never came back because I was just, I have an opportunity to do radio. I have and so I'm just going to go do that. And then I just never came back. And I think the colleges are terrified of that. Is that there's going to be a whole generation that goes off, gets into their life, and it wasn't that much worse. It was like, nah. And then the problem is then they're all their kids. And then, there's this whole cycle of you have to do this thing. And we got everybody so coded that they have to go to college, that when you uncode that quickly, it'll destroy the entire pipeline. Go ahead, Terry, and then Bruce, and then Emily.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's only a 16% return rate once someone leaves college, so that's a valid concern. But I wanted to also just say thank you to the elementary teachers, because I have a 6-year-old, and they have been amazing on the online front. And I think I've had more contact with the teacher personally about my son than I would have if he was in school. So thank you.
I actually think, as a parent, that I know more. My kids are totally online for whatever reason. In Marin County, 80% of the parents voted as, we don't want our kids to go back to school. So it all went virtual pretty quickly. And I actually think I have a better idea of how my kids are doing now, far better than I had when they were going to school, of where they are in real time, because everything was in paper, and so we never saw it. Now it's all digital. And I know every week that my son's behind on this or ahead of this or whatever, because they had to put it all into a digital platform. Go ahead, Bruce, and then Emily.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too has to do with a little bit of what I was talking about yesterday when we were discussing my own grandson. The kids themselves, particularly the college kids and the high school kids, don't really see the seriousness of the problem as I think. And that also is, I think, a fact that our country has not come together on a few ways or 1 or 2 ways to handle this. And everybody knows all the time what everybody else is doing. So there's always some place in the country where a completely free and uninhibited approach is being talked about, even while there's others where everybody is closed down. So we have no common idea in this country as to how to handle it, as do some smaller countries. We're so heterogeneous that it's hard to see how we will ever come up with a solution other than perhaps the ultimate herd immunity one where it all solves itself.
Yeah, Sky.
I'm just curious, the silver bullet that we keep trying to find, and I think to Bruce's point, it's going to be a little more homogenous in that not all places are going to need the same things. And I guess my other question, for Emily's point earlier, when I dropped my son off at college, I mean, it ripped my heart out. The life is changing, but they said, it's very likely that 30% of you will not be back next year. And of course, I'm just crushed. And of course, my son fell into that category. So I guess that's when I was introduced to the concept of being a helicopter parent, which I took as an offense. Because here I'm being engaging and I'm being participatory and I'm listening, and now I'm being told to shut up and step away. It's like, make up my mind for me, please.
And I will admit that I do have, as someone who went to college, and I actually never, I was only in a dorm when I was in prep school or in parochial school. So that's the only time I spent in a dorm. But I worked colleges. I was working for Sony Music, and I'm not a big fan. Like I will say, like, I'm a big fan of college. I'm not a big fan of taking 35,000 students, 35,000 18 to 22-year-olds, and swarming one location with them and letting them all try to figure this out. And I think that I personally think that can be, I like the fact that kids, I like community colleges in the sense that kids stay in the community that they're in, and I think that there's a social strength to that is useful too. Emily.
So I'm a big advocate for the gap year. When I was a high school teacher, there are certain kids that I really kind of steered them with their parents towards a gap year because I lived in Europe for a while, and the kids it's normal to take a gap year, and most of the kids go to another country during that gap year.
Right.
So like when I lived in Australia for a year, everyone I met was from Ireland, Switzerland, England. They were all traveling on their gap year.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come back more ready for school because they have a better idea what they want to do. And I went to school for 2 years, took a gap year, and ended up being out for 3 years. But I was traveling the world for those 3 years and getting experiences. And I was much more ready and much more prepared to come back to school and to do something. And then I have my husband who never went to college, but has an amazing career doing stuff. And, it's just, he was a freelance worker in audio and doing audio engineering for live music. And he just started doing it as a teenager, and it became a career for him. And he doesn't have student loan debt, and I have to pay mine off for the next, I think, another 7 years. Like, it's just like, and I'm an educator. So like those things, like, it's like, is college the end all be all? And is there other things that we could be doing in this year or two while this other stuff's going on, where these kids can actually find themselves and know better? And it doesn't work for everyone. There are some people who need the continuous, and there are some people who need that classroom experience and need to just be told, okay, do this step, this step, this step, and then you're going to have a career. But I think there's something to that gap year that we as Americans should embrace more, that we don't.
Right. Only a funny story about the gap thing, and then we'll keep going. But I mean, I'll go to Roscoe and then Terry and then Chris. India has some funny visa issues with Israel. And I thought there was some kind of weird whatever. No, it turns out it was because the students in Israel were taking their gap year and going to Dharamsala or in the areas around it, and then not coming home. they were like losing you. Because I was wondering, I was like, why are there there's a lot of in the town next to Dharamsala, there's all these Israeli restaurants and everything else. And I was trying to figure out why that was. And they were like, oh yeah, the students kept on coming. And then finally the Israeli government told the Indian government, we need you to tighten your visa so that they can't stay as long, because otherwise they just keep going and then not coming back, because Dharamsala is stunningly beautiful, so it's, I can definitely see why you would go there and stay. I went there for 3 days and stayed for 10. That's the best I could do. Anyway, Roscoe and then Terry.
Yeah, I personally am on plan A, but 98.5% of my university's on plan B. And what's setting in now, and we've been told that we will be on plan B for the spring semester completely through. So that has changed a lot of planning. And what's taking place now, which is also setting up universities, is layoffs. And people are extremely nervous and scared. Our parking structures are cut off on the second floor. They go up to 5 floors. I asked to shoot a scene on the 4th floor. It took 37 people on an email list to ask to move up 2 floors with a vehicle and a camera. Just people are trying to justify their existence.
Right. Terry?
Yeah, for my gap year, I took 2 years, well, it was 2 years of photography school before I went to college, and I totally was not ready for college right out of high school. I was off in my own dream world, and that 2 years gave me a chance to focus on something I really enjoyed, and then I was ready to learn for real.
Yeah.
But as far as I want to say, as far as there's some students doing live learning and some online learning. I think what you're doing, Emily, and others on this call of learning how to make online learning a true success that's when others who maybe should be online learning and not doing the live learning will see that it's possible. And I think that that's the key, is to do the best that we can with the online learning to be an example for how it can be done. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris?
My only concern, I
I'm sorry.
was on this.
Two Chris.
What's that?
Go
Sorry.
That's
I'm
fine. That's fine. Go ahead. And then Chris Clark.
My only concern was that I was on the same education path as you, Alex. So I'm all for finding alternate paths and sticking with them even. But my only concern is that the idea of, going out and traveling and finding yourself sort of defeats the whole purpose of us being careful about the COVID quarantine and all that stuff. So I could just see where there's going to be a lot of frustration for people who want to try to find themselves and not go to school, but then not being able to travel either at all, or, never mind money and the things that go into that too. So I just don't, again, I'm with you, but I don't know if there's another right answer.
Good. Chris Clark.
I wanted to say that perhaps we're discovering as a culture that what is necessary for the traditional age college people is continuing learning, but it's not necessarily only available in the package that we call college or university study. That kind of has a monopoly. It's been conflated with preparing for a successful life and a successful career, but there are many other paths that have less promoted brands than whatever finding yourself equals.
From my experience, if you got trained to be a plumber, I bet you things are pretty solid for you all the time, because it takes me 6 weeks to get one. There's so few of them that are out there. I just know that there's not a lot of them are unemployed. Not a lot of unemployed electricians or plumbers, because they can't be outsourced. They can't be you still need them to come to the house. And I'm not saying that necessarily what people are excited about, but I think that I will say that I've been really thinking about this a lot, about what I want my kids to learn. Not beyond what school's teaching them. And for me, I want them to be basically operational. All I need from school is to be basic operational. I just need them to have up to algebra, Strunk and White level writing, these basic things. And then there's a whole bunch of things that I want them to learn. Like, I think they need to know how to, these are things I take on myself, but they need to learn how to be able to be makers, make things, cook, be good in teams with other people, play well with others. These are things that I think are going to go a long way of being able to be able to create and being able to play with others. To me, is a good citizen in society, and being able to create things, I think, are the things, right? And we have to be able to read and write well enough to interact with other people. Math is important to a certain level, and this is just baseline. Then I think schools need to let students, the thing is stop trying to fill all of their time all the way until they're 18 years old, and let them go free-form, after a certain period of time, and let them just go. Now, I did that because I just ignored everything in school. I just ignored. I figured to me, every class was, how do I manipulate this class so that I get an A so my parents won't talk to me? And so then I just filled the rest of my time with the things that I was interested in, but most students couldn't do that, And so I think that we need to find ways that students can, much earlier than college, develop the things that they love, and not every person needs to know how to do calculus, and when we think about, when I have struggled with my kids, teaching them something, my kids are they're 11 and 12 years old. I can't remember how to do that. Why? Because I never used it again. And there's 75% of their class is them learning how to do things that I never used again. And I just go, why are we doing this? Why can't they, if they're really into art, let them spend 3 hours a day doing that, and because then when they get to college, they don't need it. They can, if they really want to get deep into it, it's there for them. But I think that's I think that we need to let kids develop themselves a lot more, because a lot of them, I think, know what they want to do early on, and then that's slowly beaten out of them by filling it with homework. Anyways, Stevie and then Bruce.
Yeah, to kind of add to what we're saying here, as an educator myself, I really push for project-based learning. You know, I taught in middle schools, and you know, we taught robotics and engineering, and my background is in aerospace science. So, you know, for me, like you're saying, it is such a big part of education. It's not just, you know, grabbing all of the, you know, the math, the algebra, that stuff, but how do we apply that practically? So in a space like this, as you were saying, yeah, I have my education stuff that I can fall back on, but in the drop of a dime, I can go ahead and fix the piping. I could do those other things. And having those fallbacks, you know, always gives you a space, you know, and I told my kids this as well when I was teaching in the classroom all the time. I said, look, if you have these other skills, even if it means that you're able to, you know, switch to light circuit in your house, or the switch in your house or something like that, you've just saved yourself $150. So any way we can give them that opportunity. And like Terry was saying, now in this COVID space where we're moving to a lot of online learning models, what if we were to marry that with the opportunities to go and do, you know, different types of studies? So I might have this course, this math course that I take while I'm doing, you know, something project-based, while I'm working on the, you know, the side of an engine, or, you know, whatever, to add to the work that I'm doing, instead of it just being, and I think it will engage a lot of students, myself included. I went to aviation high school in New York City, and the opportunity to, you know, work on, you know, applied mathematics right on the side of an aircraft in high school really focused me during those years. So.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, and your example is perfect. I mean, in the sense that when you're learning what you need while you're actually using it, it changes what you remember. It changes why it's important. It changes the context of that. Go ahead, Bruce.
There's one big factor we'd have to deal with in moving toward this much freer and open approach that everybody's talking about, and I think I really like as well. The emphasis on online learning, anywhere, learning anything you want, anywhere, the thing about getting skills. But there's a fundamental fly in the ointment as far as I see it, and that is the attitude or the reality, whichever it is really, that the degree that you get is going to determine your earnings later on in life. We, parents particularly, and maybe the kids seem to believe this, whether or not it's ultimately true for everybody, that if you don't get a high school diploma and if you don't get a college degree, you are going to be in some low socioeconomic status. So somewhere that reality or that attitude, if it's not a reality, has to change, or we won't ever move to things that are more free and open.
Sometimes I wonder whether that's that those studies are perpetuated by people who are trying to sell us college. Go ahead. And I agree with you. I think that, but even Google has now relaxed its, you know, what it's looking for, you know, away from college. You know, I think that people are starting to there's this thing kind of swinging around, and I think that college is needed for some students. I don't think that, I would definitely not recommend. I will flat out say that until I got a job till right before I got to ILM or Lucasfilm, I was living in basements, you know, like for years. So you know, eating rice, you know, like it was very austere. So my life was austere until I was about 26, you know, so it was, you know, as I figured out what I was going to do, and I made good money at some times and not in others. And it was all this thing. And then I kind of broke out, and then off I went. But other people don't, and it was a lot of hard work. And when people say, "Oh, so you're proof that you shouldn't go to college," I'm like, I don't think so. Like I don't think I'm the proof that you shouldn't go to college. That was not. You have to be pretty determined to do that. Go ahead, Terry.
There we are. I was muted. You know, I think it's not about where you learn, but about gaining the passion in the first place to learn something, or to have a passion that you love. I have spent my whole career in video editing because I love it, not because I learned it in college. I happen to, however, find that passion when exploring in college. So
Right.
I think it's just, you know, there's no one answer that suits everyone, but I think the key is finding and exploring a passion and being supported by your community or by your teachers or your family to really dig in and get down and deep into your passion and become an expert, because once you become an expert, people will pay you for things. That's the way it is. It doesn't matter if it's building a light bulb or a video
Right.
editing system.
Yep.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Roscoe?
Yeah, go to college and find a mentor, but you don't have to go to college to find a mentor. If you can find a mentor, you're set.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Chris?
I'll say personally, the best $10 per month I've ever spent is on YouTube Red, just to never, ever, ever have to see advertisements. And no, really, because I watch like thousands of hours of tutorial videos, which I'd never be able to do if I had to wait for the 5 seconds or whatever for the, I just couldn't do it. So the $10 per month is massive for me.
Right. Good, Sky.
I will say, to Chris's point, Masterclass has been a huge boon for me as well. And to Bruce's point, I once handed $1 to a gentleman with the cardboard sign saying, "Please help." And I said, "How you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm alive, and everything after that is attitude." So I thought that's a great, okay, you got your priorities. But my question is, since Budweiser is the attractant and Jägermeister, I'm wondering what corporate sponsors could we get excited about learning, since their people group they're selling to is no longer gathered in that 30,000, 80,000, state college concept. So I'm just wondering about corporate investment. Obviously Apple, however, Budweiser is now kind of frustrated.
Yeah, and I just put a poll out. We were talking about polls earlier to see how many of us use Masterclass. A couple of us, how many people are subscribed to it. Don't ever get one. Like one is like $80. The subscription is like $150, and then you just have it every year, the whole year. So it's another $10 or $15 a month or whatever to do that. But I'm just curious how many people have Masterclass. The reason that I say that is because the reason I ask to look at it is, what I think is missing in Masterclass is this, what we're doing here, the live conversation that is related to it. Now, it'd be amazing if we had the actual people that were in Masterclass, but we could even do it where we all watch it. We're going to watch a chapter, and then we're all going to talk about it as an extra hour or whatever about what that is. And I mean, like because I think that there's that there's something about appointment-based, we're all going to come together and talk about it, that gets everybody cramming. If we're going to talk about David Mamet's first chapter, it's not going to be very interesting if you didn't watch it. So, and I think that that's what's missing in LinkedIn. And, Linda, when it was lynda.com, Linda and I had a lot of discussions about that, I was very focused on wanting to have this kind of live interaction with folks and have discussions and process. And so I feel like that's, for me, what's missing also in LinkedIn is the live part. They have LinkedIn Live now, but there's not this connection between it and the training that I think would be really useful. And I think that, but I think that content's out there. I think that LinkedIn right now, LinkedIn Learning as well, in their higher end stuff, as well as Masterclass, is showing us where education can go as far as generating content. But we still have to get back to Stevie's and other people's points as project-based. Like, so what do we do with that? And we're experimenting with that a little bit with our little coffee challenge. Emily's, we didn't show the video of it because you didn't have a video. I didn't have a way to show it at the time. I thought Emily's was amazing, and there was a couple other ones that were interactive. We missed Jeffrey's because I just didn't see it. So we're going to do more of that. We're now going to contain it to video just as an experiment so that we can make it down to 1 minute. So we're still doing it for those of you who are looking at it, but it's not about coffee. It's really about experimenting with the process of building video training and what that would look like, and learning from each other to do that. But I think that there's again, that project, like you can watch as many cooking videos, you can watch Gordon Ramsay or Alton Brown all you want, but until you try to do it, you're not going to, have those questions ready. The project itself is designed to dig up the questions. Next question. Speaking of that.
Next question comes from Gregory Taylor. His wife, who's a second grade teacher, would like to share parts of her recorded Zoom sessions. Due to student privacy, she will need to blur students. Is there an easy way to do this? She's running Mac OS and has access to Final Cut Pro.
There is a blur plugin for Final Cut, and I don't think it's very expensive. I can't remember what it's called, but basically it's just a tracker with a blur. And you literally just tag onto someone's face and say, blur it, and it'll just go woo and move around and everything else. But you will have to keyframe it per person. So there's a lot, you'll have to go through and set that up. That's not I don't know if they have to do all of them. It is interesting that it seems like a facial tracker would make sense. Like it wouldn't be hard to have a facial tracker just grab onto the face and blur it out automatically. Go ahead, Roscoe, you raising your hand.
Well, I was just going to say, if she does a screen grab of what she's doing, she should stay in the upper left corner, and then she could just blur out the rest of the screen and just cut out herself. So, I mean, that to me seems a much more easier way. Doing each kid and tracking them, that's a lot of work.
I mean, the question is that if the only thing that you would need to show, I think, is the screen shares. You know, it might be easier just to Roscoe's point is to blur everything and just add back the screen share or just unblur the screen shares. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just going to say one of the things that I do find lacking about the online school, or my son finds lacking, is he puts in all his homework and does some things that he's very proud of, but there's for privacy issues no way for him to share it with the other students, only with the teacher. So that is a little bit of a disappointment with the whole online learning, is the privacy.
Yeah. Yeah. Emily.
I got from John Iddleston Grain, and I got hooked up with them. And what it does is it gives you the transcript of your Zoom, and then you can go to parts of your Zoom, and you can even highlight as you're teaching if you want, and then it'll clip it out. So, I mean, it doesn't help with the blurring if the kids are in the picture while you're explaining something. But it does let you crop down to specific, like if you're looking for like, oh, this is when I was talking about this specific skill, and you could clip it out as like a 1 or 2 minute video or whatever. But that, I think it was grain.co. And you just sign up for it. And when you start your Zoom, they set you up, like they do a call with you and they set it up for you. But basically, as you start your Zoom, there's a little emoji button you can push, and every time you push it, it just marks the film, and then you can instantly send those out as private links, or you can cut it out, put it into something like Movie Maker and edit it some more, add titles or whatever. But it was just really nice to get specific, like if you're talking for 45 minutes but you only needed a 3-minute clip, it was really easy to use.
One thing that might be I mean, it depends on the computer, but you could theoretically just do a separate record of yourself of what's going in using OBS or QuickTime or something where you have a record that's clean, doesn't have Zoom at all in it. But that would depend on what you're using as a base. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I want to explore this a little bit more if I could, because I may be from a very different generation. What is this idea that there's so much privacy concerns that a student in a class can present a paper but only to the teacher, and that nobody else in the class can hear it? I'm thinking back to when I was in class, you always had to stand up and read whatever it was you wrote to everybody in the class. However, what is the educational benefit to that, or the social issues resolved? I find myself a little confused about needing that much privacy within a classroom.
Emily, Roscoe.
So it has more to do with who else is there. There was a really interesting article this week on adult bullies in the classroom, K-12 classroom, and it's parents sitting next to their child, and that violates FERPA, because if you have the whole class online and the parent is watching, and then Johnny says something, and then, Timmy's mom is like, well, Johnny's an idiot, or, like then contacts the teacher and says something, and then the parent finds out, it turns into this big mess. So there's a privacy protection in place. And the hurdle is that because we're in people's homes now, there are so many issues that are popping up that we've never had to deal with before, like the kid with the BB gun on the back wall, and then the police were called, and then, the mom screams at a kid, and then CPS is called. And it's like, some of these things could be avoided with just a conversation with the family, between the teacher and the family, if it isn't something, pressing. But the FERPA issue is the big hoop. Like what defines that child's educational privacy right, which is no one gets to see their work or their grade or critique their work other than the teacher and their classmates, obviously, as their peers can view it. But then when you go, there are other people in the room watching. Even siblings technically violates FERPA. Like if you have a sibling in the room watching another sibling's class, that violates that classroom's FERPA privacy. So it's just a big hurdle to get past some of these like laws that are in place to protect the child and their privacy and their information. So it's not as simple as just standing up in front of the class and recording your presentation. But it comes into all these other, like, who else is watching? What are they doing? Are they recording it or taking pictures of you and then posting it somewhere? It's just really sticky and ugly.
That makes a lot of sense. And absolutely, I agree with that decision. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
Oh, no, I've 100% what Emily just said. My only question is, does it stop interaction between students?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that the hardest part for school right now is that the whole note passing thing is on steroids, between the students. So I walk by and, my, the kids all have Discord open, so they're all like, there's this constant flow. Like I don't know how much teachers understand. I mean, I don't know how many of them are using Discord. So I don't know how many are conscious to the level of communication going on between the kids. But the kids are talking about all kinds of different things. And then they're talking about the teacher, and then they're talking about the class, and they're talking about all this other stuff. And I can try to get them to close it. But I mean, they're on, I don't know, my kids are on 20 or 30 different Discord servers, and they're all, there's all this stuff going on all the time. And I haven't decided, I've been watching it and haven't decided what to do with that yet. I tend to think, if you haven't noticed with this, I tend to think slowly, or move slowly, think fast, and so I just I have to think about it for a little while. But it was kind of amazing to see the level of communication between the students that's happening. It would be as if they were all talking at the same time while the teacher's talking. Like it's, and I didn't realize that's what that's really what the experience is like, whether the teachers know that or not. But I think that part of that is also the teachers needing to engage the students to be doing things all the time rather than talking to them. I don't think the teachers realize that when they lecture, students aren't listening at all. Like they're if they're not in the conversation, they are literally talking to each other the whole time. I don't think that's sunk in. It didn't sink in for me until the last 2 weeks of how little the kids were. If the teacher is talking for more than a minute or two, they immediately just go to, they're just talking to each other and everything else. They're not hearing any of it. Go ahead, Stevie.
Yeah, just to add to your point there, when we got into this new space of education, I've been working on digital classrooms for a while now, and making that transition into the digital classroom was extremely hard because the pedagogy is different. How we teach, how we give out questions, they're all completely different than, when I'm in there in the classroom, I could see over the kid's shoulder and see exactly what they're doing. So, the big question for me was, well, how do I make my assessments in a way that doesn't allow for a kid to just, Google search it and get the quick answer for it? How do I get them to now, instead of showing me on a, multiple choice question, that they know how to select the right answer? How do I get them to show me that they know the right answer? And that's a big change in the way we teach, the way we do things. And especially now that we're doing it, I mean, as we even talk about, doing online testing for our districts and getting the kids to do testing from home, what if mom is standing over the shoulder? How do you, deal with those situations as well in that space? So there's a lot of, like, as Emily was saying, there's a lot of nuance to this whole space and how we interact in this new place. And then also for us as educators, how do we now change the way we do things and make it more engaging, as you said, where they're watching and actually paying attention and being part of the process, and then also not just cheating through the whole thing.
Well, I don't know how to make it I don't know how to generalize what I do. Like when I teach, because I've talked about it before on these things. My mode, I have a very standard mode of operation, which is that I challenge the students to do something that they are insufficient to do, and then everything that I give them is food. It's like here I know what you're going to need, and so I'm going to slowly dole it out, and I'm going to do it slow enough that you're constantly going like this, like you're just grabbing onto it because you can't finish the project without it, and I have to figure out a way to make it fun enough that you're not just doing it because you're getting a grade, but you're doing it because it's fun to do, and so. But I don't know. I know how to do that with media production, which is easier than English, in my opinion, because I don't like English. So I think that I don't know what I would do, in if I had to teach there's certain subjects I just don't know how to do that, and so, but I do think that finding ways that we engage students in something that, all of us show up for this because it's giving us something. We're getting something out of it every day, for the people who come. The reason I show up every day is because I learn something from all of you every single day. Like I learn, I learn things from this group every day, and that's why I do it. And so we have to find ways that we're getting that. And I think that conversation makes a big difference. I don't lecture too long, more than a minute or two at a time. Next question.
Okay, Ashadev is back with, we'll be embarking on a project to help a middle school history teacher create instructional videos for YouTube. What do I do as a non-teacher geek, and what do I need to know before I embark on this project?
Anyone's hands there? I mean, I think that, again, so I'll also say a couple things while we're waiting for everyone to kind of simmer with that. Is number one is that it needs to be snappy. Like, it really isn't just putting up a lecture where you're talking through a keynote. Take that keynote and cut it down, but really think about 5 minutes is the longest you should ever make a video on YouTube, in my opinion. I mean, other than this one, that's a conversation. But I mean, if you're making videos about subject matters, 5 minutes is the outer edge of that piece. And I'm focusing mostly on, as I design stuff, to relax, I design training that I want to do at some point. Right now, I'm so busy that until middle of November, I can't even think about it. But when I get out of that, I'm thinking of these little 1-minute videos that I want to do about something that are really fast. And you want to watch a lot of YouTube. Remember that your kids are watching a lot of YouTube, the kids that you're teaching. So you are competing with that, and look for the things that are really about things, because kids are watching, you are competing with it, whether you like it or not. And you're going to be compared. And if you're compared as less than, they're not going to watch it. They're not, and so you really, it's on your shoulders to be engaging and to get good at it. It doesn't mean that you need a bunch of tech. I still think you can do it with Keynote, Keynote or a presentation tool. You don't need a bunch of tools, but you do need to think about there is some media training that's required, in the sense that you got to get to the point quickly. And you can't meander. You can't go around the house 3 times and go through the front door. You just have to go through it. And know that there's a temptation by educators that we work with, and not just educators, but technical people, that they want to explain everything. There's all these if I tell you how to do something, I know that there are 6 other things that you probably need to know too. And I want to tell you all of those things in my video. And that makes it really dry and boring. And so, so what you need to do is you need to say, I'm going to tell you the most important things. And then I'll make other videos about those little exceptions, and I will have conversations with you to discuss those exceptions when they come up. The fact that you didn't touch on all those things actually creates gaps that the students will ask you about, and they'll tell you what other videos you need to make. Because they didn't understand this from point A to point B. There's like 3 points that needed to be done. And as they ask you about those questions, and you can make them later, but the key is that you got to get point A to point B really fast. And more direct. Go ahead, Bruce, and then Stevie.
I'm getting on mute. My point is everything Alex said, I absolutely agree with. And I learned here on office hours about the value of YouTube itself. So if you're planning to do videos, this teacher, one of the first things to do, I think, is take the topic you're going to teach and look at every YouTube video that has been made on it. And virtually every topic in the world has a lot of videos, and see all the things that are good and bad about it. And then follow the rules that Alex, you were just talking about. That's how to do it.
And watch TikTok. Like, you have 2 days to download it. Download it. Like, if you don't have TikTok, you have to watch TikTok, because all your kids are watching TikTok. And you need to watch the educational stuff on TikTok. It's not all perfect, but it is breaking ground with, I had to build a training on how to build a kit. And because of TikTok, my training was still 4 minutes and 20 seconds, but it's a really complicated kit. But there was all these time ramps and all this focus shooting and all this really fast cuts to get to all the things that need to be done, because I just know that no one's going to watch that anymore, and so understanding time ramps, understanding how to compress time over, when you're doing the education stuff is really important, and how to very quickly move from one thing to the next, and then slow down to have conversation with them. It's the information. You want to give them something that gets them thinking, and then get them and then have a conversation about the rest of it. Bill?
So when I started out, there was 3 stages that I used to have to do for every video, and I don't think everybody uses them now, but they're really important, I think, to help you if you don't know how to do this to do it. The first stage is treatment. There's treatment, outline, and then script. So the treatment is the explaining of why you're making the video at all. And you have to be real specific about it. I am making it to do these 3 things, and I want the outcomes to be like this. That goes into an outline. The outline is ruthlessly cut down to get rid of all the extra fat. And then you're going to create a script from that. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm saying that traditional thought process of 3 stages helped you get down to a script that did its work efficiently.
Emily's laughing. Now, what was there was big smiles there. What was the Emily?
My husband said you forgot Stevie, and I said, I know. I texted Stevie to raise his hand again. Sorry.
Go ahead, Stevie. Go ahead, Stevie.
It's all good. I know. No, I was just going to add to the conversation here. Yeah, one thing that based on the question that was asked, it seems like he's another tech, or she is another tech integrator like myself. And coming from a different field, like, seeing it with those fresh eyes, like I'm coming into this history class. I don't know how you teach your courses. It gives you a little bit of an edge in that space because you're seeing it as the student as well. So use the fact that it's not your core material that you're teaching. You're just bringing that technical background to the scenario there to help push that information is really, really important as well. And then also one of the things that I found is commercial breaks. Even when I was doing classes with my students, I found a way to, whether it was to throw a meme in there or throw something else to break the monotony of whatever I'm showing off. Because, teaching circuit boards to middle schoolers was not the, moment for most of them. But because I would throw in a commercial break here or there to grab their attention again and give them something that they're really engaged in. And as you guys are saying, closing down that time. So we're not covering everything about robotics in this one period. We're going to deal with the core items as we go, but then throw in a commercial break here and there to kind of get their mind processing what you've done and kind of break up the monotony in those type of videos is useful to me anyway. It's huge.
It's huge. I mean, I know when I teach classes, I'm looking at everybody's blink rate, and you can still do this in Zoom. I do it here too. I look at how people are engaged, and I'll change subjects faster or slower based on that. So if I see people all looking away, or if I see them all looking down, or if I see all those things, I'm going to change the subject. I've told you that now. So now everyone will just tell me whether they want to do it or not. But if I don't see people respond, I'm paying attention a lot to what those things look like. Go ahead, Emily, and then Sky.
I was just going to say, when I was in the classroom teaching high school, and I would put up, like, I had to do the Crucible, and we'd have to talk about mob mentality, and I would just show a clip from Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail, where they get the witch and they accuse her of being a witch. And it's just that whole little scene. And then we talk about mob mentality, and but it engaged the kids because they were like, most of those kids had never seen Monty Python anything. So they were like, this is really bizarre and weird. But then when they were like, why did they make those ridiculous arguments? And then everybody was with them. And I'm like, yeah, that's mob mentality. And then we would go read the Crucible, and they were able to connect more to the witch trials in Salem and things, and understand why people were doing what they were doing. It made that connection for them.
I have a huge collection of videos from behind the scenes and movies and everything else. When I'm talking about film and I'm talking about visual effects, I've collected a large number of examples so that I can go for hours where we're just showing parts of movies, but we're then talking about them. Like, here's a minute and a half, and then let's talk about what we did there. And that's to get back to your point. I think that it's really important to change the media, change the style a lot. Go ahead, Sky.
I will just mention, Emily, the holy shoe. Okay. So that's a great, yeah, they taught a lot. That, I guess, to Steve's point, is I'm pondering the philosophical question of, if it's not entertaining, it has to at least be interesting. And as you were talking, I also realized and Bill's point about structure, as we are teaching, it's a film script, and we're going from scene to scene. And your comment, Steve, about doing commercial breaks, we're using those metaphors. But of course, I'll finish with the irony of Emily's husband is in the next room 6 feet away, texting her, proving our point that we're not paying attention to you, Alex. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah. And the shortened version that was once told to me about it from a screenwriter, I was like, how do you do a screenwriter? And just remember that there's 3 acts. Describe the tree, get him up the tree, get him down the tree. That's it. Like that's all you do. You just do that over and over again. Every movie is made that way, and not everyone, but most of them. Last question that we have here lined up. Oh no, we've got more. Never mind. This is the last one I'll be here for, and then I'm going to hand it off and let it just keep going because there's no reason to stop. All right, go ahead.
James Folson asks, the new dual spotlight zoom feature seemed promising for adding ASL. Alex mentioned without updates, it's a nightmare. Looking for solutions where students and the ASL interpreters connect to Zoom and have a window for communications.
Yeah, so I've had the opportunity to think about this a lot because I have a lot of ASL empowered shows. We do a couple a week that have ASL interpreters, and one thing is gray backgrounds on ASL, amazing. Anyway, so it's easier to read and everything else. The other thing is that what I think Zoom needs to do is have an ASL like we have interpreters. Zoom needs to create an ASL class of person. So interpretation, like if you want 5 or 6 languages, you can have these special ones that are added that are just available for those languages. What I think is missing in Zoom is an ASL one that will put it in the lower right corner or lower left or upper. You can decide what you want, but the bottom is the ASL is a small window or smaller window that just sits there and is persistent. No matter what you do with Spotlight or Grid, it just knows that person's there. But that's someone who's assigned as an ASL, and it would fix a lot of things. The problem right now with the problem at the moment with the Spotlight, the multi-Spotlight, just so everyone knows, and make sure we all know what's happening, is that if you're not in 522 or above, any of your multi-Spotlight does not show up for anyone else. So it'll just be, this was like a terrifying thing. Fortunately, my show turned out okay, but I thought I was doing all these crazy spotlights. Nope. For 30%, 40% of my viewers, all they saw was the last person that was spotlit. And so so if they're in 522 or 521, whatever, or 520 or below, they're not going to see it. And the other thing to know is that, and I didn't, so when we realized this, we spent hours, I didn't realize there was someone else on my team. We spent hours testing it to figure out what was going on. So the older versions will not represent it. The second thing to remember is we tested on the web. The web version never shows grid or spotlight or multi-spotlight. It only shows speaker view and spotlight. That's all the web version. If I could turn it off, I don't think there's a place for me to just turn off web access, but I would, to just force everybody into the app. Because the web access literally defeats everything. And so these were things that came up in a test last week that we realized how far off things were. I think everybody now in our group is all 5222 or 522 or above. But I think that if you're not doing that, you just have to know that if you're doing multi-spotlight, there's 25 to 50% of your viewers, depending on age, aren't seeing it. So, they're not, and that was like it was a huge upset for us, that we couldn't figure it out. But hopefully, we're not the only ones that have brought it up. Zoom is working on updates. John Edelson had mentioned it, and other people have. So I think the fix is coming, but you just have to know right now that that's an issue. Go ahead, Beju.
Just a question on this further on. Do you know what happens with the multi-spotlight when it goes to YouTube, basically through the streaming? Does it follow it there, or does it not?
I think it does, but I'm not 100% sure. It's something we didn't test on our end because we're grabbing these and streaming them out. So yeah, it's a good question. Go ahead, Sky.
On the Teams organization, when we did the big broadcast recently, they had to bring in multiple translators because ASL is a very active thing. Yep. And they also had the dark clothing as well. So there's tips and techniques there so you can see the hands, the contrast. But they would have, for one speaker, they would have 2 people.
We swap them every 20 minutes.
There you go. Yeah.
So we're swapping ASL every 20. 2 can go a long way, but you have to have at least 2 to do that. So,
yep.
Anyway, I need to go work on a show, but I see 2 now. So does everyone see 2? Does everyone in Mukana see 2 up? Everyone here should be in 2.5. Bill, I'm going to make you. Oh no, Oh, Beju's already the host, so there's no need there. Go ahead, Bill.
No. I was just doing two. Seeing two. I was answering.
Oh yeah. So I think everybody here is in. I think our group is all 522. Anyway, I have to depart, go work on a show. But we have more questions and more time, so you guys can go as long as you'd like. I'm going to keep watching on. I've gotten to this thing where I leave and I'm still with you while I'm working. I listen to it and I might even comment in Mukana. So anyway, so thank you all for coming, and my favorite conversation, and it's good to see you all. And I will see most of you hopefully tomorrow morning. So bright and early. All right, take care.
Okay, so we're moving on to the next question, which is from Bruce Francis. We talked earlier about how students are dealing with the changes during the pandemic. What have been some of the experiences of teachers and administrators, things that have worked and or epic fails? Who from the group wants to jump in on this? First, let's start with things that have worked. Anybody found something that does a good job during this new environment? And it's going to be very quiet, isn't it? I'm not a teacher, so I can't jump in on it. Roscoe, you're hesitant.
Well, I shared this before, but basically the fact that we have the entire campus now as one giant movie studio is really cool because there are no campus, so we're able to shoot in locations. And the student says to me, she says they all bring their own lawn chairs and stuff. She says, "This is just like camp. I'm having a blast." I'm like, okay, I'll take that as a win for that day. Hopefully, it'll stay a blast. But then against that, I'm trying to shoot in a parking structure on Monday, and it took the force of, so that was the flip side of it. There's a huge bureaucracy just waiting to pounce on one little class.
I'm interested. Aaron Graham is teaching third grade, as I understand, and we haven't heard from you yet. And I'm wondering what are your third graders doing for their gap year?
So unfortunately, there's no gap year there, but I know that my third graders have really been enjoying doing things like movement breaks, things like checking in. We'll do something called the zones of regulation check-in, and we use the characters from Inside Out from Pixar, and we'll ask them what zone they feel like they're in. And when they can communicate that with me, if I see that they're scared or upset or really upset about something, I can hop to another Google Meet and check in with them. So that's something that's been working so far this past week, and hopefully that continues.
That is awesome. Great. Anybody else? Oh, Emily, dive in.
So I went to my department meeting on Friday, and my big boss came in and she was like, "Your work in the district, her son's district, is seen." She was like, "I actually got to see it firsthand," because she had to take the day off and be home with her son because her husband was working. And she was like, the teachers used Zoom. They engaged with the kids with Screencastify. They had them on Seesaw drawing and doing things. And she was like, "Now I get it." And I was like, finally, only 6 years into my role here and you get what I do. But like that idea that she actually saw it, and then, the feedback from parents was positive, as opposed to the end of the school year last year where parents were like, "I don't understand, and it's not clear, and everybody uses something different." Like, we really made it a concerted effort to make sure all the teachers in one district really stuck to one system and utilize that to the best of their ability, instead of everybody choosing their own path. And then you had like one kid in second grade doing one thing and one kid in fifth grade doing a completely other thing. So hearing that made my heart like so happy, because it was like, oh my God, they actually used it. But yeah, that was a win this week.
All right, then we're going to Steve C. and then Chris Clark. Go, Steve. Oh, Stevie C. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
didn't know whether I did that right. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's all right. I just realized that I was still muted. Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what Emily said, when, we started, we kind of do the same job as tech integrators. And for my district as well, it was, me coming from the more so the background of the teachers, you would go in 2-3 years ago, "Hey guys, let's try out this software. You're going to love it." And they'll, whatever. Now they're like, "Can you please, for the love of God, come into my class and show me what we're doing?" And that's been good. We've been really working towards bringing everybody together, like Emily was saying as well, to integrate their work in one space versus having different tiers for different levels, and having different software for everybody. This has been really, really helpful to our parents. They're really enjoying the fact they could go to one spot and get everything that they need. We're a Microsoft district, so we're using, the Teams platform is core to what we do. But it has been amazing to see the increase in the usage, and then also the end of last year, I had some kids, high schoolers that live in my community, that would see me mowing my grass and stop and just break down in tears because they were so like, all that was going on was just so much. Now I'm just really, really happy that, I'm seeing them. They're giving me the high fives. I saw your video last week. I know what I'm doing. So that's been awesome.
Yeah. What Emily said reminded me of back in those days when you'd land a client and you realize you spent 6 years preparing for that one moment when they said yes. I think that's going on everywhere. Chris Clark, go ahead.
I wanted to mention something's going on in a local high school district here, which is realizing that they can't duplicate the 5 days a week, 6 hours a day engagement schedule that we were used to in the face-to-face era. That so they've decided to, they used to have a half-day Wednesday that would allow teachers to do professional development essentially on Wednesday afternoon, so early dismissal. Now what they've done with all virtual is that no time is required synchronously online with the students or the teachers. So Wednesday is a quote unquote day off. Teachers get a chance to catch their breath, perhaps do some professional development. Students get a chance to catch their breath. They need to check in once for each class just to pick up whatever assignment or homework or keep the ball rolling that the teachers have posted, but they're not locked in their rooms attached to their laptops for 1 day a week, which is, it's a start.
Yeah. Emily, I'm going to pop back to you, but I first, this whole idea of the emotional component and you all taking care of the emotions of your student, I think is incredibly powerful. And I know that there are a lot of teachers out there who are just scared to be in this environment and are dealing with a room full of kids who are equally nervous and scared. So helping each other deal with that, I think, is critically important. Emily, go ahead and pop in on whatever subject you like.
Well, yeah. So I don't remember if I said this in the chat the other day when I jumped in from work or if I said this last weekend, but like there's been a big shift from our districts from like content, like you have to coach us in how to do the best new literacy standards, blah, 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 to can you please do more SEL training for our teachers? So social emotional learning for our teachers so that they can, really work with students and work through the trauma of what's going on. And that this trauma is going to keep recurring for, the rest of this year, the next 5 years. You're going to see it 10 years from now still affecting people because it is trauma. And just like, we lightly compare it to the trauma after 9/11 in the sense of that hit a certain generation of kids much more differently than it hit adults and it hit kids who were in college when it happened. Because, their innocence was shattered at a much younger age. And so we saw effects of that going forward much longer than people anticipated right off the bat. They were like, oh, it won't really affect them. But then we saw these things continue, like changes in attitude and stuff. But to answer the second part of the question, which was epic fail, we haven't got here yet, but my districts are talking about going back into the classroom at the beginning of October on a hybrid schedule. And some of my districts are encouraging teachers to teach to the class and live stream to the students that are choosing to stay at home, which we've talked about in the past and used certain top vocabulary to describe that, which I'm not going to reinforce. But I do have a fear that this isn't going to work and that teachers aren't given that time that like Chris is talking about, like having that half day on Wednesday or early dismissal on Wednesday in order to create and build things that are more sustainable and more durable for the at-home learners, I think is going to be a big problem. Teachers aren't getting an additional prep period to prepare for home kids. So they're expected to either live stream or record lessons for those students at home. Well, that's a lot of work either way it's not going to be great if there's not a lot of time and planning put behind it in order to keep the kids at home engaged and also address their needs in a meaningful manner. Plus, they're not being given office hours to meet with those kids at home. So if you record a lesson for a student and they watch it and they have questions, then you're answering emails. You're not having, there's no scheduled time to like sit with the kid during the school day and go, all right, what are your questions about the recorded lesson you had this week? So I have some really grave concerns about how hybrid is going to look. And so I don't know if anyone else has gotten there yet with their districts going hybrid and if it's working or if, you know, I would think personally that they should have either set one teacher as, okay, you're the grade 3 remote teacher so that that person's just working with the kids at home, but maybe they didn't have enough. I know that money's tight. I know that there's a lot of other issues, but I don't know if anyone can speak to that.
And I just want to briefly, Mike Nescut is here in the panel. We don't allow anybody in unless you, I assume you're an educator hoping for, but unless you live video, and we're just checking to make sure nobody's Zoom bombing things. So Sky, you had your hand up. Let's go to Sky, and then we're going to come down to Chris Clark after that. Go ahead, Sky.
Okay, thank you. I'm curious about Terry talking as an editor to Emily's principle, in the sense of, as an editor, we live in a dark room and live other people's lives. And that's why COVID for me is kind of a, come on in. It's great in here. We love it. And I don't know if I'm an extrovert or an introvert that's been, you know, brought in with people into my room, but I'm just curious, the relevance that technology now is why it's meeting the need. And in sales, you're always looking for the pain point. And so consequently, what problems are we solving being the technology expert? And so by sticking to your guns of, you know, this works, I affirm you. But Terry, I guess I'm curious, to be an introvert or an extrovert as an editor, because we have to focus really hard in a dark room. We keep a lot of scenes and stories juggling and trying to smash them together into a timeline. And I think that's what teachers are now being asked to do, and take, you know, and watch the eyeballs and make sure they don't touch Bitty and be worried about the hip. And it's like, holy crap, I have no idea, Emily, how you're doing it. So I guess my question of as an editor, we have honed down the essence of what needs to be said into the tiniest, best point. And the teachers, how can we give advice to teachers as editors?
Cool. I mean, from a storytelling and, you know, engagement point of view, I would say that as a human being, we get attached to a certain idea because something in our mind makes it important for us, and then we don't let go of it, even when it doesn't fit the story, or even when it doesn't move the story forward, we insist on putting it in. And that's when we lose our audience. So just really remember your goal, and don't add in things that don't further your goal. And that's the only way I know how to edit.
Makes sense. Chris Comfort was the last hand I saw. So let's do Chris, and then we'll come back to Emily immediately.
This is about a bit bouncing back, but you know, Emily had a really good point about the some of the parallels with the 9/11 stuff, and I've had conversations with friends recently about that. I know the one big difference is that, you know, with 9/11, we could turn to each other for comfort, no pun intended. But with this coronavirus, we are each other's danger. So I think that's a whole different level of, you know, PTSD or whatever that's going to come out of this, where we can't even turn to each other because we are the dangers ourselves. So,
yeah. Aaron.
So my district is currently hybrid, even though I'm the third grade remote teacher, or one of 3. And I know that the teachers in the classroom are kind of feeling a little overwhelmed because they're trying to teach their normal schedules while teaching hand washing and having breaks for them and mask breaks. And while they're taking mask breaks, they're trying to email parents back that are having trouble with an assignment, whether or not they've made a video. So it's very overwhelming for the teachers in the hybrid model, from what I've been hearing.
It's overwhelming for a lot of society, and you guys, I think, are just, it's a more concentrated version of that because you're dealing with all the issues of a classroom full of kids, whether it's virtual or personal. Chris, go ahead.
Yes, I think we ought to be aware that hybrid means a lot of different things. It just means too many balls in the air. And some of the problems are technical problems, some are psychological and management problems. But what hybrid means is you need to do everything all the time, not just one thing at a time. And a little story about a university version of hybrid that is a kind of an epic fail, which is the university set up very expensive technical rigs that would permit live instruction in the classroom with social distancing and plexiglass boxes everywhere, and enough cameras and monitors to also engage or invite people at a distance to participate in the class. And this instructor was told, well, reluctantly, some of your students registered for this course have said they prefer to be there in person. So you're going to have to, you can't teach from home. You have to come into this university classroom, which we've set up perfectly. 14 of your students are going to be participating in person, and the other 30 are going to be somewhere else. So the instructor prepared for that moment of truth, showed up on the first day of class, and only one of the 14 who said they would be there and preferred to be there was actually there. So that allowed the instructor to, for the rest of the course, to do the right thing, which is teach it all at a distance. But the university was kind of counting on all of our university instructors being masters of ceremonies at this remote and local operation, which is way too fragile for almost anybody without a full production team. I mean, you, as seen on TV, yeah, it looks like Dr. Oz can do this, but actually it's Dr. Oz's team of 32 experts who are making it possible to give the illusion of doing live and distance education.
Yeah, it's real easy to look smart when you have an IFB and the best people in the world are feeding you data as you talk to people live. Most teachers don't have that, I would guess. Terry has your hand up. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, I mean, if you're combining and doing a partial online, partial live, what about equality for learning? Especially, I don't know if anybody's doing that for K through 12, but it seems like we've put we need to put a lot of energy into making sure that every student has the same experience, and that doesn't really fill that bill.
That makes sense. Aaron, I'm actually interested in the developmental things that you see, because you got kids in 3rd grade, 2nd grade, kindergarten, and they're going to have a different impact than the college gap year kids. I mean, that's a little bit about what I was trying to get to. Some things work at some levels, and they have a much bigger challenge down at the level of an elementary school pupil who's that young. Are you hearing or seeing or talking with other teachers at your level about how that's going to socialize or hurt socializing of the next generation?
Absolutely. We've been talking across the district from other schools across our district about how this is going to impact them. And whether they're hybrid or they're remote, we know that they're anxious. We know that they're scared. We can see it when they're talking about it. It's very heartbreaking. And the more we can just kind of come together and kind of share our students' experiences and make sure that they know that they're safe wherever they are and that they're cared for, that's kind of what we're bringing to the table right now. And the content is going to come in, but like Emily said, the biggest focus right now is making sure that they feel safe, they feel like they're ready to learn. So that's our biggest takeaway this past week.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, as a mother of a now almost 7-year-old, it's surprising to me, but I guess it has happened because every night he's having panic attacks and asking about death and when we're going to die and what's going to happen and if we're going to die, and you know, there's a lot of tears involved. And it was bad enough with COVID, but then all the fires came, you know, on the West Coast, and it's a real threat, and there's really no good answer for it, because I can say, yeah, we're not going to get COVID, but really the truth is I don't know. I mean, we're doing our best not to get it, but it is a very heartbreaking thing to watch. And I think having, you know, the regular everyday schedule or every weekday schedule of meeting their teachers and their peers, and having something very consistent is really important for them. It's also important for parents who have to also work while this is going on. So I'm personally not a fan of the gap day. You know, it might be good for teachers, but for students and parents, it's horrible to have a day that's not like the rest at this point.
Interesting. I'm going to move on just because we're not going to go forever and do the next question here. Chad Lafarge asks on Discord, a new production role was recently mentioned, the COVID-19 compliance officer. Does education as a, not industry, but the whole broad scope of it, have a similar role to help schools safely care for and teach kids who have to be in the classroom? Are you doing any COVID prep and things like that? Emily, go ahead.
Yeah, it's called the classroom teacher. Honest to God,
that's
it's
your
just
compliance
another role.
officer.
Yeah, we have
another
to
job on top of the 20 you're already doing. What the heck?
Yeah, exactly. Now we have to teach them how to wash their hands, and every 15 minutes we have to walk them to the counter to wash their hands, and or not 15 minutes, but like it's like once every hour you have to have them have a 15-minute break to wash their hands, and then you have to have 5 minutes for a mask break, and different schools have different protocols. And so it's up to the classroom teacher. I mean, there's guidelines from the CDC and there's guidelines from the state of New York, but it fell on us again. And it's not, like it's taking part of your class time to be that person, and like, keep your mask on, and oh, did you sneeze in your mask? That's gross. Go change it, please. Like, it's just not, it's like, it's going to be another thing that you have to do. I just made Aaron crack up. So, but
we'll give Aaron a moment. Bruce, go ahead, and we'll come to Aaron next.
I wanted to ask Emily, do the teachers still have to fill all of the usual requirements for content, for levels, for getting the students prepared? Has there been no modification of those other requirements?
No, not yet. Last year we canceled the Regents test, which is a New York State test. And then this coming year they're scheduled. So they're on our calendars, the state test for 3 through 8, and then the high school Regents tests are still on the calendar. They may go away depending on how the year goes, but no one's counting on it. So you have to, I hate this, teach to the test, make sure that you cover the content that's covered by the test, not teach to the test. Obviously that's not good pedagogy, but it's kind of what has to happen in order for them to cover everything that's covered in those tests.
Makes sense. Aaron?
So what's interesting from what I'm hearing from my hybrid teacher friends is that everything that younger grade teachers have been teaching kids how to do, how to share, how to communicate well with others, to like make eye contact, be facing them. They have to now undo that and say, no, you can't share a pencil with someone. No, you can't share your red crayon. And that's so, again, disheartening. I keep using that phrase, but it's very disheartening that you're teaching kindergartners and third graders to say, no, you can't share this, or it's nuts.
Wow. Stevie, did you want to get in on that, or did I not? I'm missing your hand there. I didn't know if I saw you or not. No? Okay.
No, we're good.
Okay, great. So we're going to move on to the next question here. Let me hit the answered button on that. And we're going to Peter Collins from Vail, Arizona. K-12 teachers, how have educational vendors held up these last few weeks? I know of one that increased their servers by 70%, but claimed to be succeeding in supporting schools online. Are any of the vendors that do things in your classroom helping? Go ahead, Stevie.
Yeah, well, for our district, as we said before, we're using the Microsoft platform. And I spend a lot of time talking to them on the back end. And I will say this, that with all that's been going on and how crazy things have been, they've been at least listening and trying their best to adjust and adapt as we go. And we also use a platform, eSchool, for our SIS stuff. And they have also, you know, when we're looking to sync grades, and we had some issues, you know, getting everything booted up. And it's funny how, you know, they're bending over backwards to really, you know, support us, give us the additional supports that we need, sometimes building out materials really, really quickly and sending it back to us to kind of support the work that we're doing as well. So, I mean, big shout out to them, because they're dealing with so much. And then to you know, reach out to us, you know, when we need it, that's been awesome.
Emily?
Yeah, we had some bumps this week with big vendors like Google. Drive went down in the middle of the week and like during the school day. I've noticed a lag in both Google and Zoom right about 11 a.m. every day. A lot of our kids get kicked off at 11 a.m. and then they have to go back in, which isn't really a big deal, but it's just a disconnect. And it seems to happen around 11 a.m., which I'm assuming is because that's when the whole country is now online and back to work and more people are using it. And then people like Schoology have been really slow to respond, but I'm sure that they're inundated with things, you know, coming, you know, not working the way they're supposed to. We had a lot of sync issues between grade books and LMSs. So different LMSs were having trouble syncing the grade books so that kids' assignments weren't there, or kids weren't registered for some classes, but not for other classes. And so it's just a lot of troubleshooting. But overall, they've been very helpful and quick to fix things, where in the past it might have taken like 3 weeks to get an answer. They're actually getting back to us by the end of the week. So like Stevie said, big shout out to them, because I couldn't, I don't want to be them right now.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything to Sky, you want to pop in on it?
Well, I'm just grateful to be here. Anything I can do to support is what I'm trying to reach out. And Emily and Aaron and Stevie, and I'm so happy to see Terry, that you're giving, and then you're coming back and you're learning and giving again. So it's just these are kind of my heroes. So thank you. And I am actually off to go do a thing. I don't know if you were wrapping out or not, Bill.
We have one last question here. Somebody's
I'll
asking
stay.
what
Okay, I'll stay.
systems are you using to collect student work and communicate, Seesaw or anything else? Emily, go.
So I love Seesaw, especially for K6. It's a creation software. So students are able to draw, if they have a touchscreen Chromebook, it allows them to do a lot of different things in one platform. So they can record themselves, they can draw out on a whiteboard and record as they're drawing, so they can explain thinking. They can share activities quickly and easily between the teachers. And there's also a parent communication tool built into it. So parents can see what their kids are doing digitally, as well as, you know, talk back and forth with the teacher privately, or as a whole, like the teacher can send out mass announcements to the entire class. When they're in school and it's not hybrid or at home learning, they even can collaborate with each other. But again, that FERPA thing keeps them from collaborating from at home. And then also it integrates well with other platforms like Microsoft, Google, and Schoology, because it has this share link. So if your school is using one of those LMSs to keep track of assignments and stuff, you can throw Seesaw in as an assignment into your Google Classroom. And then when the kids click on it, it takes them to Seesaw, and then they can do the work there. But I had to tell like 4 different administrators this week that Google Classroom is your LMS, and that's your hammer. That's what's going to get all of your assignments home and keep you on track. Seesaw is your paintbrush. That's where the kids are going to go and create and draw and explain and learn. And so you need to use both, because they were splitting their kids up into like, oh, just teachers can choose to use Classroom or Schoology or Microsoft, and then they can use Seesaw if they want. And I was like, no, they need to use one of those things and Seesaw, because the tools that are in the regular Classroom LMS stuff don't allow for a lot of creative stuff to be done easily. And so that was my pitch for Seesaw, and I'll be done now.
Nice. Thank you for that answer.
I think we're at the end of the hour. I just personally, and I know Alex is 100%, but the reason he created this part of this sandbox is because I know how passionate he is about trying to help all the educators that are out there to navigate this whole thing. But I think everybody watching here today and everybody listening and really everybody in the country who has a clue is tremendously appreciative, or they should be, about how much extra you guys are having to do in the midst of a pandemic, taking care of the next generation of human beings. I mean, not just Americans, everywhere around the world. And we all are standing in awe of the effort you're putting in. Thank you so much for what you do. I hope you invite more people to come here on Friday and Saturday, because the more questions we have, the more diverse things. I mean, we tend, because I think some of us are older, to not do things like put that focus on the small end of elementary. And I love the fact that you were here today, Aaron, and could talk to us about some of the unique challenges down at that end. So please come back. Teachers, if you're listening to this, please come participate. The more voices we have, particularly from all stratas of education, the better this works. Thank you all for coming. And Beju, do you have the closing music? Or you do. There's the Will Turn scream. Tomorrow is always traditionally the more philosophical day. So if you want to philosophize, come tomorrow. We'll be here for, I think, 3 hours. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.